It's Friday, March 29th, 2024. With our traditional. What was the word I came up with last time? It wasn't traditional. It was something with a C.
Customary.
Thank you. I keep wanting to say contrary, which.
No, it's not contrary. Although you know what, it is kind of contrary that there is a shill segment to this show.
So it's that's what I was going to say. It's not necessarily the most ill-fitting word, but
our customary contrary.
Well, it really shouldn't be called a shill segment because shill. Actually, this is a funny thing. This is odd that we brought this up right at the top. In many of my peccadillos with the way people use language in the modern era, I often hear shill conflated with. I'll give you an example. There's a commentator on one of the many technology shows I listen to.
Okay.
Yeah. What are you gonna say?
I was gonna say, isn't shilling usually when you're like selling your wares? You're trying to sell your wares.
You know what? Let's go
or your product
to the definition. Like shill. One who poses as a satisfied customer or an enthusiastic gambler to dupe bystanders. Oh, wow. So they mean so they're talking about like when somebody's running a game on the street or something and somebody's like, wow, I won $1,000. That's interesting. I didn't know it was that specific. So yeah, also called a planter or stooge is a person who publicly helps or gives credibility to a person or organization without disclosing that they have a close relationship with said person or organization. Right. That's my understanding of what a shill means. That you are pretending to be an objective enthusiast, I like that word for it, of something or someone without letting people know that it's not because of your own inherent belief in it, but instead that you either are personally tied to or being paid by said person or organization. And people are using that word a lot for people who are just blindly enthusiastic about things, and there is a difference there, and it bothers me when people do it because, as an example, and I'll do this as abstractly as possible because I don't like to throw people under the bus if I don't feel I need to be thrown under one. There is a show that I listen to, and there's a person on this show who is a hardcore Apple fan. Nothing Apple does makes this person ever consider that they might be wrong, and a lot of it, if you listen carefully, you will figure out is because this person is very happy with Apple's ecosystem and therefore sees any type of risk of alteration or adjustment or impediment to the way that system works as bad because they don't have any problem with it. And people label this person a shill. And my response is, no. There is no evidence, none, that anybody has ever come up with that I've seen anywhere that this individual is a shill for Apple. What this person is blindly self-absorbed in their usage of Apple. That's a different thing.
Yeah, you also have to remember that the nature, this is the thing you hate about language. The nature of language is always changing to the usage of the populist. So shill has a definition, but that definition will change over time because if people keep using it a certain way, there's like, for example, slang wise, I've always heard shill used in a way where people are, like you said, trying to sell their goods. Like it's time for me to shill for my shit now or something like that, Yeah, but yes, shill has a negative connotation.
Well, until the definition of the word is changed, I'm going to
Yeah.
go by what the definition of the word is. Now, if it changes
Yeah.
at some point, we all agree on that, or there is an agreement somewhere on it, fine. As of right now, as of the recording of this episode, shill means one thing and fanboy means another. Because honestly, that's the closest word I could come up with that people understand. This person is a fanboy of Apple. That's fine. And the other thing I don't like about shill is that it immediately connotes a ulterior motive, a kind of sinister or underhanded nature to the enthusiasm, and I don't think that's true.
What you're talking about is somebody who does genuinely believe that the product is amazing.
Yes. Now, within the tunnel vision of their own particular usage, absolutely, no argument there. It irritates me to no end that this person's barometer of good or bad is, I like this, it's good. I don't like this, it's bad. I think that is extraordinarily limiting. I think it is, self-absorbed is the best word. I think it's selfish and in many cases defeatist in terms of you're allowing this company to have a power that they should not have.
Well,
but those are all just personal differences, not they're being paid.
It's like people who like every movie that a director puts out regardless.
Sure.
And you kind of sit there and go, come on, movie. That movie was kind of crap, don't you think? And they're like, no, it was amazing because you did this, and this other thing. And you're like, okay, it's fine.
Right. And then it casts doubt on a lot of other things. Whereas as somebody who is an actual shill, they're doing something I feel is disingenuous and underhanded. And they should be seen as bad.
Like the Home Shopping Network is full of shills.
Right. People call up and say, oh, I love it, Lucy. This is the best foot massager I've ever had. No, it didn't electrocute me at all. Not at all.
Right. Classically, it's the whole, these knives. Oh, they cut through everything.
They cut the eyelash off a mosquito without waking the little bastard up. Yeah, that stuff.
Yeah.
That's a shill. This, like I said, I'm just saying, everybody, if you hear that word, maybe decide if it's actually applicable or not. If that changes in the dictionaries that are published at some point, then let me know. But for now, it's not.
So then it's not really a shill segment, is it?
That's why I'm saying is that's why I don't mind using it jokingly for us, because I do have a bias. I do like our show. Therefore, this is shilling. It is. Although shilling implies that I'm giving some kind of positive review of it at the same time, which is not something we're ever going to be guilty of doing. Trust me. I just like the word because I think it's funny. But what it really is a support promotional segment, a place where we're telling you how you can support the show. So maybe I'll start saying, here, let's do our little support segment. So you can support the show by any of the following methods. You can go to patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare. You can go to the show page and use the PayPal link that you will see on the right side in an array of different blocks. There's also one that looks like a book with a bookmark that will take you to Lando's Amazon author page. There is one that has a little skull that will take you to my Linktree with all of my art links. There is a YouTube link on that page that will take you to the YouTube channel for the show. And I think there's one more. I always seem to forget one. Is there one more I'm forgetting? Let's see. Oh, the Zazzle store, which nobody cares about. Oh, there is also a Patreon link on the show page as well. But also, I talked last time about the fact that I've got the dual streaming thing happening, and I have now come up with a consolidated one address that has both links in it. And if you want to bookmark that, if you're interested, that would be ozoneartfoundry.com/streaming. That will have both links, the Twitch and YouTube, in one spot. They are colored to indicate which one is there. Also, the words are there, but they are colored with the services they use. And so when I stream, instead of having to go to one of the other two links and having to publish two links all the time, it's going to be one landing page. And that way, if I add anything else or change anything, it's just one central place. ozoneartfoundry.com/streaming. My plan is to do those Tuesdays and Thursdays. The Thursday ones I know will be pretty consistent. The Tuesday ones could move around depending. So just something to be aware of. But those are there for people who are interested, because some people pop by, which is very nice. I'm always happy when anybody comes by. I don't care if you watch it later. I say that every time I do the stream. I absolutely mean it. I know not everybody's in the same time zone. Not everybody's around. My YouTube notifications don't work half the time, so I understand when people don't get notified. I know that's a real thing. Twitch seems to be better, but I don't follow enough stuff on there to really know if it is. But YouTube, as with so many things with that particular organization, dumpster fire. So if you're not getting alerted, it's fine. That's why I publish them onto the main page as well, so you can always watch them later. It's fine. It's not like I'm getting any money from it, so it really doesn't matter if people show up live or not. Happy if you do. Happy to chat, but it's perfectly fine, and I get that the notifications don't work. So that's all the support stuff as far as I understand. Yeah, that's it.
I wonder if you're going to remember that to call it the support. The support
I will.
segment.
I probably will. Stuff like weird things do stick in my mind. I mean, I'm used to saying shill segment, so I might say that first and then say, oh no, it should be support segment. I'll probably do it that way because at least they're both words start with S. So my brain tends to work like that, sort of.
Sometimes, hopefully.
Well.
You know what? It will not kill you if it goes back the other way.
No. Boo. I don't know why I'm doing, dinosaur talk now. But
I was going to say.
Yogi Bear. Yogi Bear.
Yeah, I was going to say Yogi Bear. Yeah.
Maybe it will, boo. Oh, maybe it'll stick. Maybe it won't. Oh, I'm dumber than the average podcaster.
Oh my God, Hanna-Barbera, man! I don't know if you're reaching your audience, your young audience, by talking about Hanna-Barbera.
I got to get that clip of the Leslie Knope clip where she says the thing about youth culture is I don't understand it. I really have to get that clip and have it locked and loaded because my wife and I use it constantly whenever we hear about some weird thing or whatever, all the time.
I'm doing so. I'm a super nerd, so I just finished doing my Viking college course, and I was trying to find something new to do, and I was looking through, and I thought I was going to do like a something biblical or one of these deep histories on the Bible or something like that, or the history around the Bible. But then I saw this one that was called Interpreting the 20th Century, and immediately I was like, "Ooh,
interesting!"
Go on. And it is a professor. She has essentially. She has tried to encapsulate the 20th century into this idea that it has been about a fight for.
What did you? Is this a series or something?
It's a college course. It's one of the college courses that I listened to.
Okay, it's called, what is it? Title?
It's called the Jesus Christ. You know what? Now I'm blanking. It's the Jesus Christ.
Is it
Why
interpreting
am I blanking
the
now?
20th century?
It's interpreting the 20th century. My brain just kept going 20th century. It's called Interpreting the 20th Century. And she's basically put
the
it
great
through
courses. Is it interpreting the 20th century, the
it's great
struggle over
courses.
democracy?
Yes. So she has encapsulated it into this idea that the 20th century is about the struggle for democracy, right? But that's like kind of the overriding sort of theme of the series, whereas she gets very individually into very like fascinating things. Like right out of the gate, she goes to World War I and talks about how World War I is the end of the age of idealism. Because in idealism, there was this idea that you give people you give people enough freedoms, and people will invariably do the right thing, right? And you had all these nations that thought they were essentially the illuminated idealist nations, who then proceeded to have a world war and kill off. I always forget this number, but apparently, what was it? Within the first 3 to 4 months or something like that of World War I, the entire British army was wiped out. Did you know this? The whole
entire
thing.
British
The
army?
entire British army was like numerically it was wiped out, and they had to essentially, because they had to keep bringing in new people. But numerically, the number of people that died within the first like 4 or 5 months.
Okay. So it wasn't that they all got nailed in one big battle, but the numbers
the number
were
of people
completely
that
turned over.
Yeah, they basically completely
No, I
turned the military.
I did not know that.
And
but
they kept having to lower.
Whoa, what happened? Did the bomb go off? Okay.
No. And they had to keep lowering their standards, because apparently you used to have to be 5'9" to join the British military, and by the end of the war, it was like you could be 5'3" and have no teeth. But the reason I brought the course up is because there is she goes through World War I, and she talks about the rise of futurism and Dadaism and all those, which I'm not a huge fan of Dadaism, but anyway. But I'm glad it exists. I'm gonna put it like that. But then she gets into the mass media, the rise of mass media and mass media culture,
radio, television, all that stuff.
Yeah, and how the creation of mass media culture begins to. The fear is that it has begun to create a world culture that is pushing more individualistic cultures away. And apparently when it first became a thing, people were worried that it was going to make everyone generic. Because the idea is that like she is a great thing with like Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan was basically the talk show host of America, right? But he was also the talk show host of many people around the world because a lot of, they wanted to watch Ed Sullivan. And if Ed Sullivan had a musician on his show, that was how many Americans and people around the world encountered this musician for the first time. So the Beatles were big in England, but then they went on Ed Sullivan, and suddenly, they were huge in America and amongst a lot of other places. If you made it to Ed Sullivan, suddenly you've made it. Do you know what I mean? And he was kind of the gatekeeper of the culture. Whereas now we have many more talk shows, but they're all kind of on the same. I mean, it's a new movie comes out, and what does an actor do? They do the rounds on the talk shows, right? So essentially, everybody nearly gets the same thing. The same actor going across the same shows, right? But the thing in there she's talking about that's different is the fact that, yes, mass media is creating sort of a monoculture to some extent, but it's still different based on the fact that there are people who experience culture at different times. So we're talking about Hanna-Barbera, right? Hanna-Barbera was huge when it came out. We watched tons of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, right? But no one today is going to watch Hanna-Barbera cartoons unless they're looking for old cartoons or it suddenly becomes important. Otherwise, it's a relic of history, right? So in that respect, even if you have a monoculture, you still get the generations almost become more finely separated. You know what I mean? So that comment you said of my problem with youth culture is that I don't understand it. It's like, well, yeah, you can't understand it because you're not growing up in the situation that they're in with the media that they're getting subjected to. Not to mention the fact that their level of media saturation is 10 times what yours was when you were young. Like, you and I, right, will work with us because I generally know our culture, right? Growing up, Hanna-Barbera cartoons when we were younger, right? And then that, and Looney Tunes, right? How much Looney Tunes did you watch when you were a kid? Because I watched a ton.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean...
Right? Yeah. A cross-dressing rabbit who could lure Elmer Fudd to marry him.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so funny how, like, that was a thing growing up, and now people are like, oh my God, gay culture is too much on TV. And you're like, but anyway, one of my favorite Looney Tunes is when Bugs Bunny becomes the opera singer, and they do the whole Valkyrie thing. I fucking love that one. Anyway, right? But then that graduated into other cartoons, like, did you ever watch Muppet Babies? Did you watch Muppet Babies, or is that just me?
Yeah, no, I did. Now I was thinking about it. But yeah, the pure, they resurrected it. But I remember the original one. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever watching Kid Looney Tunes? I don't know if it was called Looney Tunes. It was called Tiny Toons.
There was Animaniacs. There was the Tiny Toons.
There you go. And then around the same time, Batman cartoons. Right? Like, this is all the cartoon culture that we grew up with. Right? But the problem now is that we went to that because it was being pumped out to us on the television, right? So that was, after school cartoons, that was the shit you went to because it was available. You didn't really have an option. That's kind of the funny part about this. Is that, yeah, you could switch between different channels, but there was a limited range of what was available, right? There was only so much culture that you could digest at any time in our youth. Right? If you don't want to watch Batman, well, maybe something was on another channel. Maybe Saved by the Bell was on. But if you take the amount of culture that you as an individual could have digested at any time, let's say you get home from school at 3:30, right? So 3:30 to 4:30. There is a limited amount of culture that you could have digested within that hour, right? Whereas today, a kid can come home at 3:30, and the amount of culture that they can digest between that hour is virtually limitless by comparison. And there will be things that they are being guided to, new shows, right? But there are so many new shows and there are so many sources of culture that it is a completely different, overwhelming landscape for them. Because if you don't want to watch, if you don't want to watch one show, there's 100 more. And if you're willing to go back into time, shit, you can watch anything for the last 50 years it's been uploaded. So you don't understand. People who are older don't understand youth culture because youth culture of today has got such unlimited access, and it is changing, I think, the way that people respond. And if anything, I think that it's creating a level of anxiety through the endless choices. You know that whole thing where you sit there and you want to watch something and you just keep flipping through movies and you never really pick anything? I'm sure you've done that many times.
Yeah, they call it like the Netflix endless scroll or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, that is a modern thing. Like that wasn't even a thing when Netflix was first created. That's a thing now. That's a thing that if somebody tried to go back and explain that to you when you were a high schooler, you'd be like, I don't understand. I have all the options and I don't pick anything.
There was sort of an equivalent of it, which was, when you would just keep changing the channel, but there were far less channels. That part you're right.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? You have, yes, and you are correct. Is that 3 o'clock? But that's different. That's more of a 3 o'clock in the morning thing. But you know what? You are right, because in that 3:30 to 4:30 hour frame, if you didn't feel like watching a rerun of Batman or Saved by the Bell, you'd flip to the channels and hope you found something.
But you would eventually run out. I mean, you didn't have a million channels.
And then you would loop. Yeah, and then you would loop back on yourself, and either you settled for something, right? And this, for me, the channel looping, this was the worst in high school for me, but in the evening, because like you get to like 1 a.m. and TV starts to kind of falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
Right. And then you ended up with like all the B movies and like, all the late night movies. And some of those are fun and some of those are a piece of shit. And that's where, having been a horrible insomniac through those years, I watched a lot of bad TV. Right. But even then, limited. You're still limited. I mean, the sheer difference of access that we lived in
we're
versus people today.
A decision vortex where you can't pick something. That is a real thing that people will say. The biggest problem I have with Netflix is I can't ever pick anything. And when I have Netflix, I don't have any more. But I do remember there were times.
But it doesn't matter because you get it across different things. Apple has a ton of shit. Amazon Prime has a ton of shit. I mean,
one of the things that I really love about Criterion is it does not have infinite stuff. There's a lot on there, but they will remove whole swaths. They're like, okay, you've got a month to watch this. So you better decide if you want to watch it or not, and then we're putting a new collection in. So don't get me wrong, there's still probably 200 things on there.
Yeah, it might come back later in another collection.
It might or it might not, but there's also not 20,000 things there.
We are, so there was we talked a long, I think many years ago about the idea of the critic, right? How there was a period, there have been many periods in history where the critic, the art critic, the book critic decides what's art, right? Decides what's worth watching, what's worth reading, what's worth listening to. And I worry that because there's so much access, we are going back to a period where the critic will begin to kind of curate a buffet of stuff for you to make it more understandable. You know what I mean? Like you said, the Criterion is creating collections. That's them being a critic and curating media in an organization for you to process. Right?
Yes. Well,
because there's so much of it.
Criterion, and the way the Criterion does it, I think, is actually there are critical aspects. Absolutely. Can't pretend it isn't. But there's also the fact that, like, Freddy Got Fingered is currently in their channel. Now, no one thinks...
You said Freddy Got Fingered?
Yeah, the Tom Green movie.
Oh, my God.
Yes, that's on there.
That's
terrible. And yeah, so they have broadened their scope to just be more of... I don't know. They occupy this interesting space because they do a good job of adding what I would call kind of highfalutin. In fact, my review is of a...
Like art films, yeah.
A Dutch feminist film is my review for this show. Next to Freddy Got Fingered.
Oh, my... Right? You know what? I will say this, though. The course I'm listening to, there's a point in there where she talks about communist feminism.
Yeah, sure.
And that That actually really did kind of worry me, because there was a period in there where there were communist feminists who wanted to get rid of they wanted the state to raise children.
Oh, sure. I have no problem with that.
And they wanted to basically, I mean, essentially what happened was you had one in particular, these feminists in the communist culture that were essentially going, you know what, you want to tear everything down? Let's tear it all down. Let's tear down the whole idea of marriage and family and blah, blah, blah. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, man, could you imagine the sociopaths that would have been raised by a state-run like system of raising kids? Like just the level of attachment issues, and oh man, like I hear that as a theory and it makes me shiver. But anyway, yes, you were saying feminist Swedish.
Oh yeah, so I'm just saying that Criterion puts that right alongside a absurdist comedy by a comedian who had a very short period of relevancy, and that's what I like about them, is they don't just do the pretentious, this is high art, blah blah blah.
Every time I start to wonder if
Johnny Mnemonic was on the Criterion channel. Now I love Johnny Mnemonic, but come on, it's not Stalker.
I start to worry that I've become somewhat pretentious. I then remember that the first Jackass movie made me laugh so hard, like I practically peed myself.
Oh, anytime I might think I'm pretentious, I look at my shelf and I have Street Trash on Bluray. So
yeah. Oh, you know what? Super Troopers.
And
Super Troopers
Itchy the Killer on 4K. So
Oh, you know what? I showed my kids Blade Runner. Jesus Christ. My brain
you didn't show Itchy the Killer, did you?
My brain is Etch-a-Sketch tonight. I showed them Back to the Future.
I'm sorry. I said it's not 4K. It's a Blu-ray. I wish they had a 4K. Oh.
I showed my kids Back to the Future, the first one. Been a while trying to get them to it.
Sure.
And I mean, they absolutely adored the film, which was a success. But we saw the ultra, what do they call it?
Ultra HD?
Ultra HD.
4K. It's 4K.
Yeah, it's essentially
4K HDR.
And I gotta tell you, it looked really good.
Oh no! Look, when they do this stuff now, when they do this stuff well, this tells you. By the way, there's something that 4K does reveal. When you watch it on a good television, it will tell you whether the filmmaker really captured it well. Because when you have good film,
it looked amazing.
Aliens looks like it could have been shot yesterday.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you talk about having access, and you talk about how it's different for youth culture. It is different for youth culture, because I saw Back to the Future in theaters, but when you think of your VHS copy of movies, they were never good quality.
No.
And a lot of times, a lot of the movies that you watched were copies of copies that somebody made for you.
Yeah, from a rental store where somebody might have watched it 100 times, and of course it degrades the tape. Sure,
it was grainy. It wasn't perfect. But the movie, the cinema was so good that it defied all that. And the thing now is that, going back to what people today have that we didn't have when we were younger, they're watching the Ultra H. My kids watch Ultra HD of fucking everything, because that's what's available. It's not like we even go looking for it. That's just the option. Do you know what I mean? It's like we watch anything, and it doesn't matter what a bad shit movie it might be. It's Ultra HD. It's 4K. It's 4K shit. And it's like, sure. So then we watch like an older movie that hasn't been updated because nobody gives a shit about it. And my kids are like, why does this movie look like trash? I'm like, it's not trash. Like, it almost like it leans them against the movie, because they're like, well, it doesn't look 4K. And I'm like, well, you know what? It's not going to be 4K. It was filmed in 1960 or 1940. Like, I can't even come up with an example. But it's just that,
what? It would be interesting thing, because generally what they say, and I think they are correct about this, at least in my experience, is bad picture, good sound, they don't mind as much. Bad sound, great picture, can't watch it. Unwatchable. That sound is actually more important to almost everybody than the picture. So if you're going to pick one side or the other. So it'd be interesting to find a movie that has excellent sound and like VHS quality.
Run an experiment. Just
that's what I'm saying. But then show your kids one where the sound is awful, but the picture is pristine.
Yeah. But again, it's like, how do you think you could understand this culture when you realize it is such an utterly different world that they're growing up in compared to.
Well, I remember
even us. I mean, the person who said this, how old are they?
The line I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, it's the, let's see, how old was she in the show? That's I don't actually know what the actress's name is. Hold on. Or the comedian. Her.
Even if you think there's a vague age range.
I mean,
I'm just
I would
curious.
say that she's got to be late 30s, early 40s. Amy Poehler.
Okay,
so
okay, yeah, I know.
Amy
Poehler,
Poehler was born when?
No, it doesn't. Honestly, 40s, 30s range is fine.
Sure.
Because that's our
here
range.
it is, by the way.
Yeah.
The thing about youth culture is I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's it. That's the line.
Yeah, and it's like, no, there's no way you could, because it's so. I mean, and this happened to our parents. Like, my mother did not understand my culture growing up, right?
Sure.
But then again, my mother grew up in a dirt farm in the backwoods of Cuba. She had no electricity, no plumbing, no nothing, right? So she doesn't understand the idea that I want a computer. She doesn't even understand at that point in time what the fuck a computer did other than cause problems at the DMV. You know what I mean?
Well, I do remember, and this is a funny thing because there almost was this weird dip at our particular generation, that my grandparents, my mother's parents, I remember them watching VHSs and complaining that they weren't as good as the movie theaters that they watched movies in when they were younger. And I think they're correct, because VHS was inferior to a projected film.
Oh, yeah. No, a projector is the best as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, a digital projection of a well-shot film, if IMAX is the best. Let's put it that way. IMAX is the top end. You're not beating IMAX.
Yeah,
period.
Except the sound in IMAX is fucking awful.
It depends.
I am
depends.
deafened. It hurts my ears to go to an
IMAX
movie.
Look, an IMAX theater,
yeah,
improperly set up,
looks incredible.
Yeah, if something is not calibrated correctly, period, it ruins it all. Period.
With the Dark Knight, watching the Dark Knight, the Dark Knight in IMAX.
Well, let's remember who the director is and that they have a problem with sound.
Oh, no, I know. I'm not saying about the sound. I'm saying that watching The Dark Knight in IMAX is so overwhelmingly detailed. Especially those first shots where they show the city.
The visuals, yeah.
Yeah, he filmed
because it was shot on IMAX.
Yeah, he shot it all on IMAX camera.
Not all, but a lot of it. You can actually see it when it changes aspect ratios. There's the difference.
But yeah, so it's but I just keep going back to that. It's like, it is such a different culture, and especially as the technology begins to speed up. I mean, our kids, or my kids, when they become maybe parents in the future, will not understand their kid and that culture, especially if the technology keeps ramping up.
Well, there was a video that the Red Layer Media people put out. They did a review of Ghostbusters Afterlife, and one of the things that one of them said is his opinion was, because they said there's so many storylines all packed into this thing, it never slows down, nothing ever gets a chance to breathe. And he said, my theory on that is because kids are being brought up on short form video, that this is how movies are going to be now, where they won't let anything be slow because they'll lose the attention. Yeah. And I don't know whether that's correct or just you know what? It's possible. Honestly, I don't know.
It depends on whether you, as an adult, are curating some level of the media for your kids.
But a lot of times, kids, if they're living on their phone, they're on YouTube all the time. It does tend to be short.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My kids do not have phones yet.
Yes, I'd say you're an unusual parent.
I am an unusual parent. But my kids do not have phones yet. My kids do not have. They have iPads, but they have very limited access. And they have limited access to screen time, because I did the psychology homework on this. It's like, and my background is in school psych and child psych, so it was like, no, I'm not going to let you have unfettered access to this yet. Let's wait till you get a little older. And it's and honestly, I think they're better for it. And they don't know what they're missing quite yet, so it's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know. So they don't know that they're missing out on access. But I also don't know what the hell they would do with it. Because I know that if when I was 12 or 13, if I'd had unfettered access to the internet, I would have looked up everything, and it would have been shocking.
By the way, just to be clear on it, I should have said Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, not Afterlife.
The new one.
Was the first sequel.
Frozen Empire.
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
and that's the thing is, listen, there is an element of that because watching Back to the Future, the reason I think Back to the Future worked for my kids so much is because that is a movie that does not have time to breathe. That is a very tightly packed 80s movie. You know, it isn't sprawling. It goes one thing to the next. There's a problem, they got to deal with it. There's a problem, they got to deal with it. I mean, that movie is it's a classic. It's well contained. It's well timed. It doesn't stop. I mean, that movie does not really linger. I wonder more how they're going to do with the sequel because that one kind of goes all over the place. But I actually really like the second one more than the first one because I like the idea of time travel and backstepping over yourself and trying not to run into yourself in time and shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. But no, I think that the idea, that fear of all movies are going to be frenetic and crazy now. It's like some directors will do that, but some directors will not because Villeneuve, Dennis Villeneuve is not a frenetic director, is he?
No, and this is, by the way, when I say that was that
Yeah.
person's opinion. I've done a couple of fives, I think, at this point, because I did one not too long ago where I said these people who are clutching their chests about the future of cinema is going to be No, I don't say clutching pearls because I'm trying to be inclusive of every lunatic. So
Hey,
clutching at straws.
Asshole. I
Yeah.
like pearls. I've worn a pearl necklace now and then.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have a whole drawer. My mother gave me her pearl necklaces when she stopped wearing them. I love pearls.
Well, I don't.
Pearls.
I don't
Pearls
like
make me
jewelry.
think of pirates.
I don't like jewelry of any kind. So I'm going broad spectrum for those who don't like jewelry.
If you look at my if you look at my author photo on Amazon, I've got a big ass pearl earring hanging from a big one, because growing up I was obsessed with world explorers, and I remember going to the museums and seeing all these old paintings of these world travelers, with the big frilly collars and these giant pearl earrings and these really sharp fish, like goatees and beards and stuff like that. So no, I think everyone can clutch their pearls when they get upset. I don't see it as a sexist term. I think that if you think
I
it's
didn't
sexist,
even think it's sexist. I thought it was. I don't like jewelry. Jewelry to me is a bothersome thing. I don't like the feel of jewelry. But
that works. Go on.
I'll say this: anybody who is panicking over the fact that cinema is dying, I did a 5 where I'm like, no, it's not. Stop it. Grow
it's
up.
not.
It's
Yeah,
not dying.
absolutely.
And this is the thing: is even if a lot of movies go that way, then that will appeal to a younger crowd, and there may be people who make interesting and new movies in that style, and there are going to be people who make older style movies.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Yeah. Listen, Blade Runner 2049 is a long, slow, sprawling movie, and I adore it.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas, what's the one with Statham, where he's got the electric heart?
Oh, Crank.
Crank. Crank is a movie made for the fast food, I need to be constantly stimulated culture. That movie does not stop, right? And it's you're going to get the work of different directors, different cinema, different demands, different things are in vogue at different times, and this goes back to the whole idea of how monoculture, it's the fact that there's so much access now, it's very hard to have monoculture. Because you can come out, there's so many shows coming out now at once where it's like, this is an amazing show, and this is an amazing show, and you're sitting there going, I don't have the time in the year to watch all this fucking shit.
And that's why at this point, because you were talking about how you think critics might become an influence again. Honestly, I at this point have all but written off critics entirely because there's so much that I just have to go for what sounds interesting.
Are outside the norm.
Well, I don't know. I think that might become the norm, is because there is this sea of stuff.
I'm pretty sure that you and I are outside the norm.
Well, or what I was going to say is that the idea of critics is going to change from what we associate as that is, for example, your kids. The critics for your kids are going to be these 3 or 4 YouTube personalities or their friends whose taste mirrors their own. Those are the critics.
I hope not. Yeah.
Well,
no.
Listen, that's how everybody is.
It makes sense.
That's how we all are.
Or it'll be the
towards
logarithm.
people I trust.
The other thing would be the logarithm. I think a lot of people will fall victim to the logarithm.
The algorithm's a piece of fucking garbage. So I don't.
No, it
think
is.
that,
But I think that they will, because a lot of people will just turn on the TV and whatever movie service they're using will go, hey, you know what? You like this? You should watch one of these 10 movies. And most people, in the abs of trying to avoid kind of just doom scrolling through movies, will go, you know what? I'll take that one.
I would be very curious if that's actually borne out in real life, because, again, I don't know, but when I remember Netflix would say recommended, and the shit made no sense.
Oh,
YouTube,
yeah, some of it's really
same
funny,
thing, makes no sense.
Yeah.
Criterion, wisely, I don't think even has a recommended section. They just things we like, but they don't say recommended.
Yeah.
I don't think they have that. I think they just kind of, you can add things to your list,
So,
but I don't think they
out of
do anything with
curiosity,
it.
then, what is your standing on something like Spotify?
I never use it. I don't use it.
Neither have I, but I'm kind of curious, like, how effective it is at putting music that you like in your direction.
A lot of people I have heard say that it's very good for that. Now, Apple Music is what I use, just because it works with the iPod, the HomePods. So whatever.
The ecosystem, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. And they have a locker for my songs, which nobody else does anymore. So right there they win. If they ever get rid of that, then I'm screwed. So, because honestly, they're the only ones left. Nobody else does it. Nobody else has a music locker service anymore. iTunes Match is it. Amazon got rid of theirs. Everybody else has ditched it, as far as I know. There may be a specific service for it, but I don't know if it works on all platforms. See, Apple Music works on everything. So I honestly, I'm stuck with them because they're the only game in town.
It is funny how that happens, right?
Oh, I have a series of 5s this week. 3 days of it where I am just ranting about internet stuff. So enjoy that, everybody.
Getting stuck.
Well, I mean, about consolidation, about the fact
you know what?
that,
Listen, going back to the whole, like...
but your point, your question was about how Spotify works.
Yeah.
iTunes Music, because one thing I don't like about the HomePod most of the time is you tell it to play a song and then it just assumes you want to hear more and it tries to guess.
Yeah.
It's right about 50% of the time. 50% I'll be like, okay, that song's all right. And the other one, I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Which is
stop.
funny because I create my own playlists, which are huge.
So do I, but it just plays songs. It just plays them.
I just put it on randomly and go, you know what? Let's see what pops up. Because sometimes shit'll pop up that I haven't listened to in a while, and it's great.
Well, yeah, I do that, but I also think of songs that aren't on a playlist because I'd forgotten about them,
Oh, yeah.
And so I'll listen to them to decide whether I want to put them on a playlist. Because I'll be like, I haven't listened to this song in like the Catherine Wheel thing. The whole thing that led to me starting to talk to Doug again. I hadn't listened to a Catherine Wheel song since we were in college. I guarantee you, had not listened to one. Yeah. It just popped into my head. It's not on a playlist, so I said, well, play this. And then it played some random song. I know. Well, at least I'm aware of it. Most people don't even think about it.
I have a whole part of that in my book where there's a guy who keeps talking about an AI like it's a he.
Yeah.
And the guy and it's not really an AI. It's actually, you discover later on in the book that it's a brain. It's an actual human brain in a box.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
it's actually there's
actually a person.
It's actually a person, but the person thinks that it is an AI because it has no body. But early on in the book, when they think it's an AI, the one guy keeps referring to it as a he. And honestly, listen, if you've got no body, then you shouldn't really be a he or a she. You're just a brain.
That's true. That is, you are completely fluid.
But the guy keeps calling it a he, and the guy who works with the AI all the time is like, hey, he's like, watch yourself. He's like, you get all comfortable with these words. He's like, it's not human. He's like, don't think of it as being human. It doesn't think like you. He's like, you start acting like it's got human intentions and human logic. He's like, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Which is something that, we're famous for.
So, but to the point of how well those things do, I can only tell you Apple Music is about a half the time correct thing. And sometimes its guesses are so staggeringly bad that they are really, I mean, I have looked around and have not found any way to just not have it play anything after it plays one song. Sometimes I just want to hear one song because it's stuck in my head. I want to get it out. That's it.
Yeah, the best way I've found to find new music for me has been to basically go to the albums of people that I like, and then Apple will just say, hey, there are these other albums that are like in the same genre or something like that, and I'll just pick through them. And, if I find one or two that I like, then I'm like, yeah. Or I'm still the type of person that has like the Tower Records mindset, where I'll be like, I'm gonna go to the ambience section and just fucking scroll through. And
Actually,
see what's,
I have found Reddit is pretty good for that. Reddit is pretty good. If I go and I say, if I like this, what else is like this? And Reddit actually generally, because
I could see that working because
you get so many responses, and and so I'm not going to say everybody's right on the money, but I'll usually find one or two things in there, and I'll look at them and say, okay.
I mean, you'll get a few people that'll be like, "Fuck that band" and "fuck their music," but otherwise,
right,
of course. So you have to expect that,
right?
Well,
that's okay.
What's interesting to me, going back to the whole idea of like new culture versus old culture, is that and this is slightly switching topics, but in the same realm, I think that we have an aliens problem, because they just did the new trailer came out, right now. A few new trailers came out. I just want to say that I think
this is funny.
I think that the new Beetlejuice trailer looks fantastic, and I'm excited to see Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. I think he looks even creepier now. But the trailer... did you do a 5 on this?
No, I didn't, but I actually had in one of the Discords I'm in, somebody had said, "Oh, what do you think of Aliens Romulus?" And people were chiming in.
It's called Romulus. Now, is this supposed to be directly connected to the last one?
It is set between Alien and
Aliens. This isn't the ship that took off at the end of the last one.
Not unless we find something out. It is being called, this is a new word, an interquel, which is a new word to me.
Okay.
Which I kind of like.
No.
I kind of like.
So I don't have a problem with the term.
No,
but the term really isn't new, because there's been plenty of things like that. I mean, if you want to get into it, Mandalorian is an interquel.
Interquel.
Yeah. So either way, so I saw the trailer, and they're going back to a whole horror element, right?
Yeah.
And in the article I was reading about that, they were going about, Ridley Scott stands supreme over the alien, and and I'm like, you know what? Where the fuck is James Cameron? I'm annoyed because up to now, everyone seems to want to make a Ridley Scott movie, like something that is more horror. Whereas, like, you know what? Why don't we jettison the horror and just give me a fucking action movie?
Okay.
Just give me an action movie where, you know what? I don't need to be afraid. It doesn't need to be creepy because I know what they are. I know what the aliens are. It's not creepy. And I don't want to know their origin. I don't need to know where they came from. It's the same thing with zombies, right? There's so many zombie movies. Well, we don't need to know the origin of zombies. They're dead people that came back to life. What's scary is that there's tons of them, right? And they want to eat your brains.
Well, I'm not sure this movie is concerned with origins at all.
No, I don't think so either. The director is a horror movie director, and I think he's trying to make another alien style movie.
When you say why isn't anybody making action aliens? Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple reasons.
Well, first, I think they tried at some point, and it was shit, because Alien vs. Predator is a fucking awesome movie.
Okay, there is that. But don't get me wrong, I don't disagree that there probably is some specter of that over it, but I think part of it is there is a recognition of how good Aliens is, and I think some people are simply afraid to be compared to it. I'm serious. I think that an action person is, it's...
I just realized the other day that what's his name? His mom in Terminator 2 is Vasquez.
Oh, you didn't know that?
You know what? It never occurred to me.
Oh, yeah. No, of course. It
went over my head, and I was like, oh, my God, it's Vasquez.
Well, seeing as how I just watched Near Dark and did the part 1 of the discussion on that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's great.
It's a James Cameron movie. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I said it's basically an Aliens reunion in Near Dark for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. But the problem is that James Cameron, like you said, is such a great director, and that movie works so well with his skills that it is, it's like who can do that?
And somebody will inevitably say, well, wait a minute, what are you saying? Ridley Scott is easy to do. No, it's not that. But horror is a different thing because, and it's not that you can't make a different type of action film. You can make different types of action films. Of course you can. Anybody can make any version of whatever they want. But an action film has certain expectations when you come into it. You are coming into something described as an action film, and you
Yeah.
are expecting certain things. Horror films do not have those trappings. A horror film could be no jump scares, none at all. You never see blood.
No,
Or it could be
listen,
a gore fest where things are jumping out of the walls every
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah,
So it's a much wider
Alien
canvas.
Alien is creepy because you have people trapped in a ship with a thing they don't understand. The audience didn't understand it. It was totally new. It was a totally new creation, and Alien works as well as it did because it broke ground, right? And then what was fascinating about Cameron's approach was that Cameron said, you know what? I'm not making Ridley Scott's movie again. I'm going to make my fucking movie. And he turned it into a giant alien action movie, which still had jump scares and still had fucked up shit and carried the theme of the female or the everyday female hero over, right? And both those movies are so helped by the fact that Sigourney Weaver is brilliant, right? And then since then, right, everyone seems to be trying to be Ridley Scott. They want to make another like horror movie, and it's like, and then when Ridley Scott did them, I think my problem with Ridley Scott's whole approach is that he was I didn't need to know. I never wanted to know where the aliens came from. Now, there are things in those movies that are brilliant. They look stunning, and the David character, I love the David character. I just feel like he wasn't used to the maximum effectiveness because the story was not that good. I have no interest in the engineers, not really. You know, I realized, but this is the road that Ridley Scott wanted to go down. You know, and the other day, actually, I was sitting there and I thought to myself, you know what I really want at this point? I want fucking James Cameron to do an Avatar alien movie because that shit would be fun.
Oof, not me.
No, you don't think that'd be interesting?
I am so disinterested in Avatar anything.
I am as well. But the only way you'd get James Cameron to sign on is if he could bring the franchise with him.
I think James Cameron wisely will never come back to this because
No, I don't think he will
knows that he probably can't do any better than he did.
Hold on. No, hold on. I say that, but did James Cameron direct or just executive produce that one Terminator movie? With old Arnold?
No, he didn't direct it. He was it's all producing.
It's all producing.
No.
Okay. So
Yeah,
then I will predict that it's not impossible that he would produce an Aliens movie.
I'm going to tell you this.
Yeah.
I'm just verifying that, but I'm 99% sure. Let me look at that. But I'm because that's not a James Cameron film. Here it is. His filmography. Yes, no, he's only shown as Terminator 2, which is what I thought. And
Okay.
I would bet all the money in my bank account that he was paid to produce that last one.
Well,
That he was brought in with, okay,
they want his name on there.
you want an unlimited check for Avatar 14? We need your name on this thing. You know what I mean?
I haven't even watched the most recent one, Avatar.
No, I won't. I'm not going to. I
Yeah,
don't
and
care.
like, you know, I'm curious because I'm always curious what James Cameron's up to.
I'm not. I'm really not.
Well, I am
Like,
because
look,
he is.
I want him to keep doing whatever he wants to do. I don't want this to be. I don't like. Do whatever you want, James Cameron. Go crazy, man.
No,
Have
yeah,
fun.
it's good that you're out there in the wild. Have at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Have fun.
No,
But
I
have
do want to see
zero
what he's up
interest.
to because the guy is fascinating, and there is there's a fascinating psychology to that entity, right?
Knock
So I do wanna
thyself
see-
out.
I do want to see what he's up to, but I also want him to do something other than Avatar. You know, he did the first one, and then he became obsessed with it, and it's like, yeah, it's cool. I mean, I'm at this point, I'm more fascinated by his deep sea diving technology, but I do want to see him do other stuff because what's fascinating about Avatar is that it is essentially an alien movie, not as in Aliens, but it is an alien movie.
Listen.
And I would rather watch. Well,
Let somebody pitch him. Remember, there
Yeah.
were swimming aliens in the fourth.
oh, and that was and that's the thing is what we've had is that in all these other alien movies that have come out, there have always been things in them that were fun or things that were interesting, but they've become like
routine.
like
They're familiar.
yeah, like the last what was it, Alien 4 when they cloned Sigourney Weaver?
Yeah, that was Alien 4, which is called
Yeah.
Resurrection,
So-
maybe?
Yeah,
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, and Alien Resurrection. Yeah. And the thing is, like Alien 3, if you watch the rough cut, is great. It's great because it was a director who was unique and special and did something fucking different. And then the theater, the whoever the producers or whoever came in and said, you know what? Yeah, but we really want you to make a Ridley Scott movie, so we're gonna edit all this shit out, so it can kind of look
What's
like
all
a really
this
bad...
psychological mumbo jumbo?
Whereas
I don't
when you watch the rough cut, which is as close as you're gonna get to a okay, what's his name?
David
the guy
Fincher.
who directed it, Fincher. It's the closest you're gonna get to Fincher's version. It is this beautiful, philosophical examination of, of your fate being sealed, of, are you going to let yourself die, or are you going to be the thing that causes your own fate, of the fatalism. And, he brings in all this kind of interesting religious dogma of like the dragon, and like, it's not even the alien isn't even an alien anymore. It is like the dark part of the human soul that these prisoners are dealing with. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that's so weird, is that for me, Alien 3: The Rough Cut is a outstanding sequel to Alien and Aliens because it did something different with the idea. The theatrical cut, at this point, I could give a shit, but the rough cut is fantastic. It is the true sequel to those movies. But that's not what they wanted. They wanted it to be, a bubblegum chew Ridley Scott flick. And that's what they tried to turn it into, which it's not. And then you got Alien Resurrection. And the thing with Alien Resurrection is, I love Sigourney Weaver as a predatory creature. But it's not enough. The alien hybrid was stupid. But the scene where they're swimming in the water, you know what? That was a creepy visual. I'll give you that. And outside of that, the only thing that makes Alien Resurrection fascinating to me is it's a blueprint for Firefly. Or Joss Whedon ran out of ideas and just did Firefly again. Like, what is the timetable of that, actually? Did they come out at the same time? Or did it come out before? I always thought it was a preamble.
I think it's let's see, Alien 4 came out in 97, and Firefly, was it Firefly 99, or am I wrong? Firefly was, where's the year? Jesus Christ, where's the year? 2002. So way after.
There you go. Yeah. So Alien Resurrection is a preamble for the idea of Firefly.
Sure.
Right. There's a lot of those characters are there. I mean,
well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying, is if you get the swimming aliens back, maybe Cameron gets interested. He sure loves the water.
But again, it goes to the idea of these. There's these interesting aspects, but then beyond that, you're kind of like, whatever. And then when Alien vs Predator came out, that movie is so dumb. The only 2 seconds in that movie that are fucking awesome is when the alien queen is chasing that woman and that one predator comes out of the air with the spear. It is the one really kinetic sequence of that movie that, like, I was like, ooh, man, if the whole movie had been like this, I probably would have watched it. But it lasts for 2 seconds. Like, it's just a momentary action sequence, and you cannot build a movie off of a momentary action sequence. Otherwise, what is like there was that scene where the alien and the predator were doing martial arts against each other, is what it looked like. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, did no one watch footage of how wild animals attack?
Yeah.
Anyway, and just going through, it's like, and then when Ridley Scott finally came back, well, the movies look beautiful, but again, you have interesting ideas, but it's not enough to carry the movie. Not to mention, he was desperately trying to create Sigourney Weaver again.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's just, yeah. What you need to do is bring in a new director, a new talented director, and say, you know what, dude, do what you want. That's what you need at this point.
Sure.
Someone to come in and just have, I'm not even sure that Cameron could come back and make a good Aliens movie, and I think that's part of the reason why he never will. I think that you're in a situation where you really do need to give. I mean, think of it, if you could give the Aliens franchise to any director who would then develop and create their own version of it without oversight, who would you trust?
You already know who I'm going to say.
Who?
David Lynch.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine what he would do? Eraserhead is an
or
alien movie. I'm sorry.
Or Cronenberg, for that fact. Either of them. Holy shit.
Sure.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
But Lynch. Ooh, yeah. Lynch and Cronenberg.
Let me, because that's the thing is, a Lynch and Cronenberg film it's gonna be too off-putting for a lot of audiences. It just is. I don't think. No, I'm serious, because even Cronenberg, if you watch like Crimes of the Future,
yeah,
he's not interested in making a mainstream film. And,
no, he's not.
20th Century Fox wants a mainstream film. So let's think about this rationally, I guess.
All right,
because they would never give Lynch or Cronenberg, carte blanche. They wouldn't do it.
There's a part of me that likes Villeneuve, but the problem is that Villeneuve.
No, absolutely not.
That's not the type of movie he makes.
Alien is not made for a sterile style of storytelling.
Yes,
I'm sorry, but
that's the word.
What he
it's
does.
very sterile. It's very sterile.
Alien is not made for a clinical aspect, and that's what Villeneuve, however you're supposed to pronounce it, that's what DV does, and that's fine. It works for the movies that he makes it work for. So I would be curious if he would even make an Alien film. It might not even be interesting to him. So if we're going to talk about something where, I'm trying to think of how you balance this. All right, let's take two angles of it. We're going to talk about a horror film, and we'll talk about an action film, because I agree with you. I'd like to see an Aliens action film.
But I think already you've put yourself in a category, because the thing is, Alien 3, the rough cut, is not totally an action movie.
No. I disagree. I think I'm trying to think of, because the problem is, if you're just going to say give it to any director with a wide open ticket, you'll come up with 100 names. So what we want to say is give it to a person who makes these types of films with no restrictions. I think that's the way to do it. I think they're,
but also somebody who does have interesting ideas. Like who's the guy?
That's fine. They can inject
who's the guy who
ideas.
did Annihilation?
That Alex Garland. I
would love
the guy who
to
just did
him.
Civil War, the new Civil War movie.
Oh, I want to see that. I would love to see
a lot of
that
people,
guy.
I love the joke of, I don't understand, where's Iron Man? That's fucking hilarious.
I would like to see that guy do an Alien movie.
Yes, that's somebody I would think would make a horror film. I'm not saying they have to. What I'm saying is who's a good fit for the two types of Alien movies that we typically get.
And I would love it to see if somebody could make something new. It doesn't have to be a horror or an action.
Well, that's fine. But what I'm saying is,
go back to the Dark Horse comics. Those stories are amazing.
I don't know of a director who doesn't have things that they're attached to. I assume there probably are truly experimental directors who never replicate a genre, but I can't think of one.
But I can't think of one. Garland does a lot of really fascinating science fiction.
But he would, so he would make a horror or a more intimate. Here we go. Here's the way to say it. He would make the slower paced, more thoughtful Alien film. Now let's think of who would make a faster paced, more popcorny Alien film, which is really what Aliens is.
Give it to Michael Bay.
No. We said people that we actually think could make a good movie. So fuck that. I'm trying to think of some. Actually, George Miller.
Oh,
give it to George Miller.
You give it anything to George Miller is brilliant.
Don't you want to see a V8 running over aliens and he's made armor that's acid proof? Come on, I'm willing to see that.
I showed my daughter the trailer for Furiosa.
Looks great.
Because I think Furiosa is a good.
But come on, wouldn't George Miller make an interesting alien film? Maybe he wouldn't make what you think he made, Babe. Maybe his alien film would be completely different.
I just showed her the trailer for Furiosa because I like the fact that Furiosa is a badass female, and I want to introduce badass females to my daughters. But she can't watch the movie yet, But I let her see the trailer.
No, probably not.
And she was like, "When can we see this?"
In 10 years.
And I was like, "You got some time." I was like, "But it's really good." And she's like, "Oh my god, she's so cool." She's got a big metal arm and she's driving around and she's blowing crap up. And it's like, it's like Furiosa's badass. And George Miller is a great example of a director who's been able to go back to their movies and make brilliant sequels.
Yes.
And it's like, and not just necessarily retreading, but trying to break new ground and go different. People were so irritated that Fury Road was almost like a co-lead between Furiosa and Mad Max. And it's like, but that makes perfect sense.
Stupid.
It makes sense as a sequel. That movie only works because Furiosa is there. And honestly, the only part of the new Furiosa movie that worries me is I want to know. I'm curious to see if the character of Furiosa alone can carry the movie, or if there needs to be a counterbalance. You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't think she will be carrying the movie alone. I don't think
Well,
so. I suspect the first 30% is going to be the mother. I think it's going to be a while
really?
before we. Oh yeah, they're making a big deal about the mother. I think the mother is. I think it's going to be a large portion where she's very young. They've already shown some of it, and then the mother will get killed. She'll be captured by Thor, and then she'll basically make a deal with.
You cannot tell me that Hemsworth is not having a great time.
Oh no, he's having a blast, and he should. It's a goddamn George Miller.
Yeah,
film.
He's got a big fake nose. He's talking like a weirdo.
He's got a chariot of motorcycles.
Is he supposed to be the bullet collector?
No. He and Immortan Joe are in opposition. No.
Oh yeah, and then she turns to Immortan Joe to basically.
She makes a deal with him and says, "I will be your war driver if you let me go after this guy."
Is that still Immortan Joe, or did that?
No, he died. No, there's a new guy. The guy died. That guy died a few years after. Oh yeah, no, it's a different actor. But I mean, with the mask and everything, and he's supposed to be younger. You really don't need. It doesn't have to look just like him. It's fine.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So it's okay. That's fine. People are getting angry about that. Shut up.
But that's a great example of a director who can go back to their source material and make brilliant movies.
But there again,
and George Miller would make an amazing Alien movie.
I don't know what he would do with it. To your point about, well, they'll make something different. He doesn't make space films. He doesn't make. I know.
But you know what? That's the thing about Alien. Alien doesn't have to be a space movie.
Well, that's why when you said don't restrict it, I went to George Miller because I don't know what George Miller would do, but I trust his approach to things, and he's good with female leads. So,
it'd be really great. Honestly, you know what I would love? Do you remember the Aliens vs Predator, the first graphic novel they did with the girl who?
Yes, I know you've brought that one up every time we've talked about it. So yes.
You take that girl, you take that storyline, and you give it to George Miller, and that would be brilliant.
And maybe that's what it would be. So you said no restrictions. So would George Miller say, okay, well, what are the good alien stories? Is there any one where there's a female lead? Oh, there's this one. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Or honestly, I've always been waiting for someone to do the Dark Horse Labyrinth storyline where they've got
look.
The synth. What do they call them? The Synthloid? What are they called?
Yeah, I think it might be synth.
Yeah, I always call them a replicant, but
they are. They're replicants.
Yeah, they're replicant. But essentially, they've got we'll call it a replicant. They've got a replicant that looks like an alien because they're raising aliens in like a facility, and they have this synth that goes in and it looks like them, so they let it go and it takes the eggs and shit like that. I love that storyline.
There are any number of great alien stories that are out there that anybody could adapt if they did not have a restriction. So
yes.
Your thing about no restrictions, my no restriction pick would be George Miller.
No, and I absolutely.
And Alex Garland is also a good pick. I would be curious what Alex Garland would do
because Annihilation is a intense movie, and Ex Machina is fantastic.
Yeah, so we'll see. But as far as Romulus, my only problem with it is I didn't like all the bouncing face huggers. I thought the thing where they show a bunch of them all jumping around, I went, I don't know about that. But the rest of it looks...
just jumping. Yeah, I just...
No, see, everybody says that. I was in Discord going back and forth with somebody on it, and they were posting all this stuff about, and I'm like, no. I have no problem with there being a lot of them.
They did jump.
Yeah, okay. You think they do. Go look at the clips. They don't jump like that. My point was very specifically, and I said, and I'll say again, this is a nitpick, but it's the only thing that felt off to me, is in Aliens, when the thing runs and jumps, it skitters across the floor and it jumps right at her face, like direct.
Yeah.
Like that's the idea, is they're supposed to be brief and terrifying. And there's this one thing where they look like super balls bouncing on the floor towards everybody. Now, within the context of the show, it may work beautifully. In the trailer, it looked goofy to me. The rest of it looked great. So I'm not saying I'm not going to watch it.
You know what? I've been so let down by Aliens movies of late. So like I saw the trailer for this and I was like, oh, okay, we're just trying to. This is just a soft reboot of the series with a new Alien movie essentially.
It shows us nothing to know whether it's any good or not. I have no idea. No idea.
I know, but
it's a well-made trailer. What the hell does that mean?
I'm sure, but the theaters just seem to want the same trash.
This is going to Hulu, so this will not be... I think this is going to Hulu and maybe theaters, so you can watch this at home in like 3 months or whenever it comes out. It's a simultaneous release.
Hulu is the one that I do not have.
And Hulu's the one that did Prey, so that also makes me go, oh, well, they knew how to handle the Predator.
And I will say that Prey is an example
only on Hulu.
Of how
it is not going to theaters.
Prey is a great example of how you do a new Predator movie and make it fresh. So you know what? Listen, now that you've made that comparison, I will maintain some small level of hope because Prey was very impressive.
Yeah.
So we shall see.
So we'll see. We'll see.
What have you got for me tonight, Mr. Wizard?
I have a lot, actually. Let's see.
Oh,
Where do I start?
Why'd you let us get so far?
Well, they're not going to be the first two are not going to be long reviews, but I wanted to bring up I've watched.
This is the end of part 1 of the show. If that's really how you want to think of it, this would be the end of part 1, and now we're going into part 2.
Now we're going to the review section. So now I will apologize because I don't have Fives reviewing all of this stuff that I'm going to be talking about because I did a 3-part series this week in the 5 because I had so much I wanted to talk about. I knew I couldn't do one. So the first 3 are specifically about my reaction to one concept and the way people say the phrase, the internet is free because, and I'm like, the internet is not free. I will admit I went on a 15-minute rant.
The internet is free because you have self-deception.
I just don't like the phrase because what I said was, if you didn't listen to the 5s, because some people don't. Some people only listen to long shows.
But where did the phrase come from?
It's been around for a while, and the person who used it is a person I have a great amount of respect for, and I understand the point that he was making.
Yeah.
But my issue is the way, and this does get to a thing that a lot of people in the technology space specifically, when they talk, they make assumptions about what the understanding is of the audience. And this is not me saying that normal people are dumb. Please do not misunderstand what I'm about to say. But if you don't understand the second, third, fourth layers of what goes into technology.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not going to say that people are dumb. We'll be nice. We're going to say that people are massively uninformed. The information is out there, but you know what? If that's not your area of interest, you know what? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know the totality of how my car works. I use it every day, but I don't know the totality of how it works.
My point, my underlying point was when most people hear the phrase the internet is, and what he was talking about was monetization and how, using ad blockers. Well, if you block all the ads and websites can't be free, the internet is free because of XYZ. He's not incorrect. He's factually correct.
Okay.
When people hear.
So you are allowed to use it because you pay for it in other ways.
To some degree. But what I don't like is when people hear the phrase, the internet is free, they associate that to mean it doesn't have a cost. And my point was in these 5s, there is always a cost.
Oh, yeah.
And to say that the internet is free because there are ads, that it subsidizes, no, it does not. That was my problem. I'm not going to say anymore because I covered it in my 5s.
Yeah. No, you pay in lots of ways. We've talked about this.
Even when people say, go use free Wi-Fi at Starbucks, it's not free.
No, there's still tracking. There's still tracking going on. They're still using the data.
I will refer to those 5s because otherwise we're going to be here for an hour. I said everything in those.
That's fine. No, I understand. Move on.
But that's why I didn't review all the rest of this stuff. So, briefly, I watched the first 2 episodes of X-Men 97. I think it's great.
Explain this to me because I saw something briefly about this, but I didn't give a shit enough to read the article. But then now I've been sitting there going, wait a minute, is this a new show?
It is a new show that starts a year after the previous show ended.
No. So they're following it straight from that cartoon?
They are. And it's really good. It's really good. It feels a lot like the original.
Did they keep the kind of like chunky art style?
To a degree. I mean, it's close enough.
Because Cyclops was immense in that show.
Okay, it's not 1-to-1, but there's actually a really good comparison video that shows the two.
Is the new theme music good?
I think it's pretty much the same. I don't think they've really. I mean, no, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's and the opening is largely the same. I mean, they mimicked or mirrored many of the shots. So the art style is, let's put it this way. My problem with a lot of the ways they go back to these shows is it ends up being like The Batman, which is where DC tried to go back to the Batman animated thing and they had to modernize it and they junked it. Like they 4 or 5 times, maybe it's 3 times. I think they tried to redo the Batman animated series, but they tried to change it and make it hip and update it, and it was trash. The only one they ever got right was, ironically enough, as I am not a fan of the Adam West stuff, when they went to the Adam West style and did Batman Brave and the Bold, which is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
was
What?
Brave and the Bold where he was constantly kind of running into other people?
Yes, it's
Okay,
it's
yes,
like the
that
jokey
one, yeah.
light one. It's fantastic. Anybody who's never seen it, you should go seek it out. It is every bit as good as the animated series because it's not trying to be the animated series. It's being its own thing.
But that's
and
the
it is
whole
delightful.
thing. When you try to be what's come before, inevitably you make trash.
Right. And so when they first said X-Men 97, I went, yeah, forget it. And then the more I saw about it, where they were saying, no, this is going to be just keeping what worked before going, and we're not going to pretend that we're updating it or modernizing it. We're just going to keep going.
Here's the thing. The original X-Men cartoon show, right?
Yes.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great. Like, it's good. It's fun. I like what they tried to do. But essentially, you had a Saturday morning cartoon, right? Because it was on in the morning. That was trying to take, massive amounts of X-Men comics and make them viewable by a younger audience and having the stories make sense, right?
Yes.
Now, I applaud them because they didn't make it Wolverine and the X-Men. Like, he is still one character amongst many, and they managed to get a lot of interesting storylines in there.
Yes.
And for that, I think that the original X-Men cartoon was fantastic because it had so much work to do.
Well, what they did wisely, and what this one is also wisely doing, is, and by the way, the original series ended in 97, so they are basically telegraphing that this is a direct sequel. So I think that's also smart. But they decided to adapt what is one of the strongest periods in the X-Men comics, which is the 90s. That's when Jim Lee and Claremont...
Blue Team, Gold Team?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so by staying in there, number one, they're being smart because they're getting the nostalgia factor. Oh, people who like the series are coming back because it's basically the same one. But they're also staying within one of the stronger runs in X-Men's history. So they're being very smart with this. Now I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but they're great. There's 10. I assume they're not going to go down because they basically did this in one shot. They did the first 2 seasons are done. So I assume they're all going to be like this. Professor X is dead. Magneto takes over the team. He's wearing his awesome purple M costume, which I've always liked. He's got the long hair. It was one of my favorite Magneto looks. So it's the essential core team is there. So it's Cyclops, Jean Grey, a very pregnant Jean Grey. If it is Jean Grey, because I think it might be Madeline Pryor, because a second Jean Grey has just shown up. So I think they're going to do the Phoenix thing where she was in the cocoon. Morph's there. Storm is there.
I'm watching the intro right now.
Yeah. So, if you hear the music, it is the music.
It is. They changed it a little bit.
But not in... Everything is just slightly updated to make it a little bit smoother, but they didn't reinvent anything. They just modernized it.
But
smartly.
Professor X is still in the credits.
Well, because come on, he's not going to stay dead.
No,
he's not going to stay dead. Give me a break. We all know that. Come on. In any event, he's dead in the beginning of it, but he's not. We all know he isn't. Gambit, Rogue, Storm, Beast, Jubilee, and Sunspot is the new character. Which and they've already said Cable's in the show, so my hunch is this season ends with the New Mutants launching. That there's going to be a second series of New Mutants. Also, because if you notice, Storm has the Mohawk now.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. She loses her powers at the end of the second episode. And they've shown Callisto and the Morlocks. So I'm like, are we going to get my favorite version of Storm?
Yeah, so they're still trying to basically process all this X-Men stories and bring them into like Saturday morning cartoon territory.
I have a hunch. I don't know that, but I know Forge is in it because he's in the cast.
This makes total sense because Disney knows that they're going. I mean, listen, the fact that they're doing Deadpool and Wolverine shows that this is the direction Disney wants to go with Marvel. They want to bring the X-Men stories in, and they're priming people. They're reminding people of these stories so they can launch them.
Yes. So basically the first 2 episodes are really establishing the new team and, their place in the world. And it ends with Magneto being arrested for terrorism and Storm being depowered by the Executioner. Tries to depower Magneto. Storm jumps in front of him and takes the shot for him and is depowered. So that's really where it ends. And then a second Jean Grey shows up. And the only reason I think they're doing the Madeline Pryor thing is because in the episode, there's a part where Jean Grey and Storm are talking, and Jean Grey says, she never says Phoenix, but she basically says, oh, yeah, that time where I was taken over by an alien entity on the moon and Scott saved me. And of course, that is the Phoenix. That's what it is.
Yeah, but
so
what's interesting is that, man, they've got a lot of shit going on already all at once. Magneto
and
getting
Bishop's
arrested.
there. Bishop's
Storm
there now.
losing her powers. Madeline Pryor. I mean, that's a lot going on
Well,
all at once.
Now, I don't know that it is Madeline Pryor, but the fact that they name-checked Phoenix without saying Phoenix, that's part of the Phoenix storyline, is that Jean did not actually survive the re-entry. She actually got put into a cocoon by the Phoenix Force and then Madeline Pryor was her duplicate. But she has Nathan Summers. She has Cable. And of course, there was a storyline where Nathan is,
you're right.
by Cable.
And they're doing Cable and Nathan Summers. Holy shit.
Well,
yeah,
wait, I'm sorry. Nathan Summers was X-Man, and then Cable abducted him. So there's all kinds of stuff that they're already throwing in here.
Yeah,
and we have Bishop. So now we have time travel. So
that's heavy. That's a lot of stuff they're throwing in there.
So we'll see where it goes. But the first 2 episodes were great. They feel very directly connected to the original series.
Does Disney Plus have the original series?
I believe they do, because I thought it said I could watch it ahead of time, which I didn't because I remember enough of it. Let's see. The X-Men animated series.
It must be if they're carrying off of it. It must be there because they own all the Fox stuff.
Let's see. Actually, it's funny. It doesn't show it. It doesn't show it. Well, hold on. I didn't look on. I'll look on Disney Plus directly. Let's see. Oh, you know what? No, I think Fox owns that.
They held on to it?
They might have. Hold on a minute.
I thought Fox lost everything. They gave everything back.
You could be right. I'm trying to see. It doesn't. There's nothing that mentions it.
Hold on.
That's a good question. Is X-Men animated series on Disney Plus? Let's see.
Yes, you can watch it now. Sci-fi 5 seasons.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
okay.
on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So so because now that it's on there and they're doing more of them, you know what? I might just start showing my kids the X-Men cartoons.
You should. It's a good cartoon.
You know what? If they haven't found them already and watched them.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very good. So that's like I said, not a very long review, but
that's good enough.
If anybody was, because the reviews have been very good, but of course, like I was saying, I don't trust critic reviews. But then I watched it myself and I went, yeah, this feels like a very smartly updated, meaning just kind of sanding off the rough edges without changing anything really, or the new elements make sense. A good continuation of the series. So very good. I would recommend it to anybody. We'll see where it goes. I mean, it could bomb the ending as it always could, but at least we know there's going to be 2 seasons at least because they're already done. So it won't be a cliffhanger that never gets resolved. Disney will not be canceling this.
Yeah, and honestly, if someone turned around tomorrow and said, "Hey, they're going to continue the Batman animated series. It's going to look exactly like the original series and go and be the same thing," I'd watch that. If they're going to make just more of what it already is, like, don't try and reinvent it. If you're actively going to make more of what there already is, I love the animated Batman series. And I would watch more of that. Yeah, as long as you actually
Batman
made
anything.
Yeah, as long as you made it. Don't try to reinvent it. Just make it. Yeah. Whereas this is exactly what they did. They said, you know what? We had a cartoon that worked. People enjoyed it. Let's not reinvent this. Let's just make more of it.
Right. So
I
so
applaud
far, so
them.
good.
That's very restrained.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was more impressed than I thought I would. I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I wasn't sure I was going to like it. So that's like I said, it's not a full series review. It's just hey, yeah, at least the first 2 sure indicate that this is in good hands. So that's one thing. I also finished The Scarlet Gospels by Clive Barker. So I actually finished the book. And
didn't mean to ask you about that.
I understand why some people did not like this. It feels... I loved it. I thought it was great. But it is definitely a different type of Clive Barker than I'm used to. And the one problem I think, and this comes at the end, so maybe this put people off, is I haven't read a lot of modern Barker, so I don't know where his interests are in the modern era. Okay? So I don't know if... You know how Anne Rice got big into religion?
She got really religious at the end there. She started writing books about Jesus, yeah.
Now I know Barker isn't that. I know he hasn't suddenly dove.
No, but he said he was always been religious and that he used religion as a foundation for a lot of the stuff he wrote about. Not in the sense that he was like a crazy Christian.
This
but
is
in the sense that he loves the mythology.
Okay, this is overt. I mean, there's no subtlety to this. This is hardcore Christian religious iconography, themes, characters, all of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's said he's using that as his essentially his base.
Well, that's what's different, maybe, and maybe people don't like that because that certainly wasn't the case in the older stuff. There was religion in it. Don't get me wrong. Of course, there were parts of it, but he didn't have Lucifer, literal Lucifer, morning star, fallen angel from heaven and God, blah blah, the whole thing. Lucifer running hell, the standard definition, capital H hell, torturing souls, blah blah blah. That was, I don't remember things being that overt. When he would have angels or angelic creatures, they weren't.
No, he always kept things kind of vague enough so you felt like you were in the Barker-verse.
Yeah, that's over with in this. This is no. If you have a familiarity with the Bible, you're in it, baby, because that's what we're doing. And he also has a bit of the Return of the King problem, where he keeps ending the book and then ending the book and then ending the book. And I think that combination, because all of that is really second half of the book. The first half feels very vintage Barker in many ways, where it's the Hell Priest or Pinhead, and Pinhead has been around for a long time, and he's killing off magicians, and it feels very Lord of Illusions. Harry D'Amour's in it, and that stuff all feels like kind of old school Barker, where it's, okay, so Harry's going to go on he's going to get wrapped up in this, and he and Pinhead are going to face off, and there's going to be some kind of conflict or whatever, and we'll find out. And I told you a couple times, I said, I don't know what Pinhead is trying to do. I was trying to figure out for a long time.
No, and that's fun. It's fun that you're reading something where you're actively trying to figure out what somebody's up to,
Yes. Now, what he ended up wanting to do, as far as I can tell, was just be Lucifer again, which I'm not going to say I was let down by that.
He just wanted to usurp the king.
Yeah, that's literally all it was. Is he just wanted to beat Lucifer and become the Lord of Hell, and I guess that's fine. But there's a lot of.
You were hoping for something more.
Well, there was an inference throughout the book that he was weaving a very complex and intelligent plan. Now, he was in that, except he lost. I mean, he couldn't win. Lucifer beat him. After Lucifer dies, I think the fourth time, and comes back, because what you find out is, and I think I told you some version of this, Lucifer has killed himself, but what I actually think had happened was Lucifer really didn't kill himself because he was so pissed off that God wouldn't let him die that he decided to kill himself. But I don't think it's possible. It is not possible to kill Lucifer.
No, he keeps coming back.
Right, yeah. Because God does not want him to be alleviated from the absence of his presence. Therefore, his punishment is to always be alive and in the darkness of being blocked from God's light, which is the classic Lucifer thing. Is the worst version of hell is the denial of God's light, love, all that stuff. So Lucifer has constructed a mechanism that keeps him as near death as possible, where he is not aware of anything. So he is not suffering the absence of God because he's so close to death.
He's almost in a deep,
like a dreamless coma.
Yeah.
And so when Pinhead retracts all the blades from him, he comes back to life. And then they have this big battle because he's all pissed off. And, Pinhead kills him, except he can't kill him. So he comes back and then he kills Pinhead. And then he goes to Earth to wander around because he heard New York City is a real hotbed of debauchery. And that's kind of where Lucifer ends up, is he's heading to New York, which...
Well, he's given up on hell.
He destroys hell. He completely annihilates hell. He takes this gigantic undersea, what is, I think, the Leviathan, which I did not realize at the time, but I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be Barker's version of Leviathan. And he takes Leviathan and drives him into the false sky that blocks hell from God's light and breaks it, but it doesn't allow God's light in. It just destroys all of hell. And then he leaves hell and comes to Earth and is on his way to New York. And that's the last we see of Lucifer. So I don't know what his purpose is, except I guess he's just sick of being in hell. I'm not really sure where that's.
Honestly, it sounds like it sounds like not Dark Horse, the DC series, the DC Vertigo series.
Yeah, kinda. I mean, maybe that's what he was after. I don't know. In any event, Pinhead dies, having realized that Lucifer can't be beaten because he can't be killed. Therefore, any attack on him is doomed to failure because that's just the way it is. So he's dead. And Harry is blinded. And the whole reason that Harry went into hell was not really because of Pinhead, but because Pinhead abducted the woman that Harry works with. This was a blind woman, an old blind woman who could see the dead. She was known as New York's Queen of the Dead, and she would help spirits with whatever they needed, and Harry was kind of her partner in helping them and finishing whatever their unfinished business was. And so she is killed, and Harry now gets her sight. And so at the very end, there is this wonderful thing with the Harry D'Amour character, which I really like, where when he decides to move into her apartment because it's set up for a person without sight, so it makes sense. And she says to him, you have to take over for what I did. You know, you're made for this. You wanted to help people. You just deluded yourself into thinking it would be as a private detective. But the way your life is and the way you are, that was never going to be how it was for you. And he realizes that he's really just been chasing an illusion, which is this idea that he would be a classic private eye who just did normal cases because he just didn't want to.
Yeah, that was never going to happen.
He didn't think he wanted the supernatural life. He didn't think he wanted any of that stuff. And yet he realizes that he is compelled to keep chasing it, even though he tells himself he doesn't want it. So he finally accepts that and he becomes her replacement. And so in the end, he's helping out like an aunt and a little ghost child trying to solve whatever their problem is. And that's how the book ends. So I think what most people were probably put off by was the second half of the book, because there's a lot of just giant battles where Pinhead and Lucifer, very Superman or Man of Steel style, are just throwing themselves through buildings and things are erupting and guts are being ripped out and stuffed down throats.
Are they fighting on Earth or are they fighting in hell?
No, in hell. They're just trashing hell. So they're flying around because Pinhead steals Lucifer's armor and he's wearing it. And he thinks that'll make him invulnerable, but of course it's Lucifer's armor, so if Lucifer wants to destroy it, he can. And they're like just throwing each other into stuff and tearing each other's necks apart and all this rest of it. And, but Lucifer can't lose. So eventually Pinhead kind of realizes it and goes, well, I guess this was a bad idea, and then just gets destroyed. Really, that's what it is.
I really hope it's as simple as that. He just goes,
No, it kind of is. His last thoughts are basically that, I wanted to take down Lucifer, but that was never going to happen. And I just didn't lose. I was inevitably going to lose and I lost. Well, so much for that. And he dies. So that is literally, I think, his last thought is just like, well, what can you do? And then he dies. And then we get the epilogue with Lucifer and then the one with Harry. I liked it a lot because it really is more of a Harry D'Amour story than it is a Pinhead story. That may also be what I think some people had a problem with, is that you get far more of Pinhead than you get Harry D'Amour. And I think maybe some people reasonably thought that this was either going to be a 50-50 affair. You were going to have a lot more of Pinhead in it. And that's really not what it is. If anything, it is the final Harry D'Amour story with, guest star Pinhead. I don't mind that. I'm fine with it. But, I can see how some people, the way it was kind of marketed and all the rest of it, that, and like I said, Pinhead's ultimate goal, I'm not going to say
ordinary. It seemed very ordinary.
It seems.
I want to be the king. You're like, oh, I thought you were more interesting than this.
Well, and that's the thing is, I wonder how much of that was projected from the films, because, the original book is, I think when I talked about this the first time that I was reading it, the original book is not exactly a huge novel. It doesn't spend a lot of time getting into this stuff. So it may have been unreasonable, or it may never have been Barker's intention to assign a level of high intelligence to this character. And honestly, if we step back from our impressions of the character in the movies, he's not exactly a brainiac either. But in the movies, we don't really get much of his background, or, we don't really see, even in the movies that go into hell and all the rest of it, it's not like we get a long period of time where we see him playing three-dimensional chess against, Einstein. He's basically a sadomasochist with a lot of superpowers and chains. And that's kind of it. So I don't know whether it was reasonable to think more of him, or if this is just the idea that what makes him seem grander than he is that to ordinary human beings, this is Lucifer. Except that when you then put this character next to Lucifer, he's nothing.
What does Lucifer look like, out of curiosity, in Barker's
He's a gorgeous, wingless, glowing, Fabio, I guess. He's projected as being like all angels, physical perfection. He's hung like a horse. Because, Barker loves to point out when his characters are well hung. He does it multiple times to multiple characters. That's fine. I'm just saying, you will get a good sense of people's genital setup in this book. So if one of your
genital setup, I like that. That's better than general setup.
No, or genital dimensions are well categorized in this novel. I'm just putting it out there for you.
And I think that's the letdown, is that essentially when you think about other Barker books, you think about I love Weaver World, right? You think about Weaver World and the strange sort of mysticism that he created in that world. That world does not feel like it needs to live in a Christian mythology. Now, you could make it, because there's lots of magic, right? But it doesn't need to. And another book like Imagica, I fucking love Imagica. Imagica is other worlds. And what's beautiful about that book is the idea that, even beyond the worlds you've seen, there might be other worlds, right? And it shows a great capacity to dream of the beyond. Whereas maybe the problem is that people were expecting the fact that Pinhead is after something, that you get this great tour through the kind of back alleys of the Barkerverse, through the the mystical evil areas that you always dreamed were there, and to have it all just be Christian mythology, and to have Lucifer just be a well-hung Fabio, it's kind of a letdown. Because you know what? Even what's her name? In the new Sandman series, Gwendolyn Christie. Having Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer is glorious. But she's also this big woman with a very commanding presence, right? Now, if she'd played it naked, that would have been fine too. If they wanted to, let us know what her genital situation was. But it felt different to have a more female presentation of Lucifer, whereas very often it's a very sort of male presentation. In essence, the fact that he is a Fabio, a wingless Fabio angel in this. But it feels like a letdown because you were expecting something more intricate and imaginative from the Barkerverse.
I think that's what a lot of people's problems with it is. And the other thing is, this book was marketed, and when it was talked about, most of it was centered around Pinhead. Now, I remember they said Harry D'Amore would be in it, but it was really... I remember seeing an interview where Barker talked about the fact that he was never happy with the way Pinhead was in the movies, and he felt like the character, he never liked the name Pinhead itself. He felt like that character went in a direction that he didn't really like. That's one of the reasons why he killed him off in the second movie, is because that wasn't really his focus. It was different things. And so he was talking about the fact that he wanted to kind of reclaim and realign the character to what his ideas of it were.
If anything, Pinhead in this book is actually a perfect mirror to Harry.
Yes. And that's the thing.
Because
if this
Pinhead
book
is investigating and looking for all the he's looking for all the magic so he can fight Lucifer.
Yes, that's why the first 20% or so feels so much like a Lord of Illusions continuation that it's if this book had not been called the Scarlet Gospels, if it had been called Harry and the Hellersons, then you would your expectations would be correct, because or Harry D'Amore and the Hellersons. I'm doing a Harry and the Hellersons thing. But if it had been more focused and more marketed as this is the last Harry D'Amore story, I think people would look at it differently. Honestly,
the way you're describing it actually feels very balanced now to me, because you have two characters who are pursuing something and don't really know, are missing a prevalent piece of information for their end goal, right? So Harry has been pulled into this situation because he's trying to get his friend back. But Harry does not realize that what he really wants to be is that kind of detective, right? He doesn't realize it till the end, and it is a reveal even to him, the fact that this is what he really wants to do.
Yep.
Whereas the reflection of him is Pinhead, who is collecting all this magic. He's going to destroy Lucifer. He's going to take over, but never does he stop to fully realize that Lucifer cannot be destroyed. And the thing that he wants destroys him, whereas the thing that Harry doesn't realize he wants sets him free.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
It sounds like a pretty well-balanced book.
And that's what I'm saying is I think the problem is the way this book was presented and marketed, which was really...
So you enjoyed it?
Oh, I enjoyed the hell out of it. Like I said, once I got to a point and I realized, okay, this isn't really... Because going into this, I really expected it to be all Pinhead, like background, that there was going to be some kind of big thing. Because again, I was taking one version of the character, which was really the movie, and I was mapping it onto this character, which even though I knew and had read Barker saying multiple times, I never liked the way this character went in the movies. So I should have known that this was not going to be the movie version. And once I kind of understood that it was Harry's story and I liked that character, so I was fine with it, then I kind of reoriented my perspective on the book. And then it was a lot better. And the most interesting things are really none of the Hell stuff, none of the Pinhead stuff. As far as, it's fine once you understand that he's just one of an order and he just decided to try to be Lucifer, which, many have tried and all of them have failed. So, and Lucifer says something to the effect of that, where he's like, oh, so you're going to do the same thing all these other people do. Don't you understand that I can't be killed because God has made it that I can't be defeated? There can't be any other Lord of Hell because this is my punishment. Or what don't you get? It's one of those kind of things. And even he starts just yelling at God. He's like, you know what? I'm sick of this. Can you just let one of them kill me? Like shit like that. Like he's just tired of it because, it is supposed to be. This is one thing that a lot of depictions of Lucifer forget or don't highlight correctly is a lot of times Lucifer seems to be having a fun time running hell. Like, Lord of Hell.
He's, if anything, if you go by the classical religious idea, I mean, really, Lucifer was part of a company of angels that revolted against God, and they were upset because God gave humanity free will, and he did not give free will to them. Right?
Right.
That was what the revolt was. And what's fascinating is that if you go back and you read a lot of the history, the devil and Lucifer are actually two different people. It is only later that those two become...
merged.
Merged into one person. But they're two different people. The devil was part of Lucifer's gang that failed and were cast out of heaven. And Lucifer's pain is, he is... I've said this before in the show. Lucifer is still an employee of God. Whatever you want to think about, Lucifer is not God's adversary. Lucifer is a employee who tried to take over the company and failed and kept his job in the mailroom. Right? Now, the largest fucking mailroom there is, where people have the shittiest jobs. But Lucifer, it's actually kind of amusing because in a way, Lucifer is kind of pathetic. Like, he was one of the greatest angels and he failed in his coup. So now he still works for God, except he does not get to stand in the light of God, but he's still doing a major service for God, which is that he is handling the world of the sinners. He's handling everybody who gets shoveled in that, God doesn't want upstairs. So if anything, it's like, you got to remember that, no, it's not great to be Lucifer. Being Lucifer sucks. If anything, it's a hopeful ending for Lucifer because Lucifer says, you know what? I can't die, but I don't need to stay here. I can leave. The problem is it's not original because Neil Gaiman already did it in Sandman.
Right.
Where Lucifer says, you know what? I'm done, and gives the key to Dream and says, find somebody else to take over, and fucks off.
Yes. So like I said, once I kind of adjusted my perspective on the book, then it was fine. I like I said, I have a feeling a lot of the reason that people reacted negatively to it is because they thought it was going to be this big Pinhead story. And that's really not what it is. So as long as you are okay with that, and, just understand going into it. And I do fault at least partially the marketing to some degree for that, because that's how they marketed this thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, he can't handle, the marketing is not his fault.
No, it's not, but that's...
Yeah, he wrote the
book. It's going to lead people to be disappointed.
The publisher handled it, yeah.
So like I said, I had a lot of fun with it. Just understand going in that it's not really Hellbound Heart 2. It's really a Harry D'Amour story that just happens to have the main antagonist being the Hell Priest, or Pinhead, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
Long as you go into it with that, I think it's very good. I enjoyed it. I like where Harry ended up. I thought it was a nice ending for the character. And ultimately, I'm more satisfied that Harry D'Amour got a good ending than Pinhead having a satisfying reason for what he's doing. Because Harry D'Amour is a good character. He should be rewarded for trying to be a good person. Pinhead was a piece of shit. Putting aside the fact that he's awesome in the movies and he's one of those villains you love to see, he's not a good guy. You're not supposed to be rooting for him.
And if anything, he is vain in the idea that he thought he could beat the devil. Lucifer. He thought he was better than Lucifer, and if anything, did not fully think through on God's plan.
Pride goeth before a fall. We see it in action once again. So, like I said, I liked it. I'm not going to say it means everybody's going to like it, but I was happy with it. Having not read Barker in a while, I wasn't sure what it was going to be like coming back to him, because as with most people in life, when you get into a different stage of your life, your interests change. Sometimes your art changes, and I was very happy with where it ended up. Is it the same as his early stuff? No. So for some people, is that going to make it lesser? Well, that's up to you to judge. That's the nature of art.
Yeah,
I thought it was a very good book.
It sounds like an entertaining novel. I mean,
I had a good time with it.
I think the problem is if you come to it thinking with a presupposed notion of what Pinhead is.
Yeah, you really have to separate the movie version from... I mean, what I probably should have done, and what I would recommend to others to do, is reread The Hellbound Heart. It's very short. It's the Barker version of the character. And just go straight from that to this and just try to put out...
Do you think that they work as a single novel?
Hellbound Heart and Scarlet Gospels is one novel?
As a single unit.
I mean, I guess you probably could have, because it is so short. Could you just combine them into one? Yeah, probably. The thing is, and this is again where it was my error to mix in the movie version, because...
But that's always what happens lately.
It is, but Hellbound Heart is also not about Pinhead.
It's not.
Those characters are really not in it all that much. It's about Kirsty and Frank. So even there, it was clear that Barker's use of the Cenobites is to illuminate his human characters, or to expose their inner selves. The Cenobites aren't supposed to be the main characters, and so even there, it is consistent in this one. Now, I would argue they're in this book. Well, the one primarily, the Hell Priest, is in this book far more than even they were in the Hellbound Heart, or, to be honest, the first Hellraiser movie. He's barely in that. And that was Barker running the show, and he's barely in it.
Yeah, because
so again...
honestly, he's not that interested in the character.
Yes.
That's what it feels like.
Well, I don't think he's not interested, but again, that's a character that's an extremity to then reveal the human characters in reaction to it. Which is a lot of creations.
And at the end of the day, Pinhead was human, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
now,
Pinhead
in the book...
Pinhead is flawed.
The interesting part of that is Pinhead is revealed to have been a person, a man, in the second Hellraiser film. So in the Hellbound Heart, there is never get that far. No. Now, Hellraiser 2 was written by Clive Barker. Therefore, you have to say, okay, well, he was fine with that idea. So there's a picture of him as a human man shown to him right before he's killed by Dr. Chenard.
Yeah.
But in the Scarlet Gospels, interestingly, there is a debate by different demons on whether he was human, was multiple humans, very similar to the Phantom, who just adopted this persona, or if he is an immortal being. And there is no definitive statement of that made. So,
no, and that says to me that this is not supposed to be connected to the Hellraiser movies at all.
yes, and that's why I'm saying I would, especially if you've never seen the Hellraiser films, or maybe you've only seen the first one, just read Hellbound Heart and then go straight to this. Could they work as the same novel? Sure, you could call it, the Hell Priest Chronicles, I guess, or Chronicles of the Hell Priest, and have both books in there. And sure, that would be fine, and maybe that will be eventually something that happens. I don't think it wouldn't work, but I also think there might be a very specific reason they're separate books, and that's because it's about the human characters. And so mixing them together might actually make it more about that character than it should be. You know what I mean? Because they're combined. Yeah. But I don't think it wouldn't work. It would just be, it would make it seem like it was more about the Cenobites than the humans, maybe. I don't know. That would be an interesting question for Barker. I don't know if he's ever been asked that.
I'm looking at his bibliography, and it's interesting because Damnation Game. Oh, it doesn't put them in time order. It's got his novels, and then it groups them off by Hellraiser series. Yeah, that's annoying. Well, the thing, Hellbound Heart was written in 1986. Scarlet Gospels in 2015. There's a big gap there.
Oh, huge.
Yeah. But he's working on a book right now called Deep Hill. And in 2009, he did a book called Mr. Maximilian Bacchus and His Traveling Circus. And in 2014, he did a book called Chiliad, a meditation. I'm curious about these. In 2007, he did Mr. Begone, which apparently was quite good, too.
Yeah, I've always read that one's good. And based on this one, I will probably start reading more of his modern stuff because I think this is very good. And, that was my thing is, like Stephen King, modern Stephen King, some of it's okay, but it doesn't work the same to me. And maybe that's because I've changed as well.
Yeah.
But I also feel like the writing is different. Not bad, just not the same. It doesn't seem to have the same kind of, and maybe it's the cocaine and alcohol fueled imagination. That's very possible. Or the fact that he's older and he got into a major car accident and, his interests are different. So that happens.
The Adventures of Mr. Maximilian Bacchus and His Traveling Circus is a fantasy novel, which makes you curious. It is composed of 4 interwoven stories penned by Clive Barker when he was in his early 20s. In the winter of 74.
Oh, well, then that would be very interesting because that's like a window into the older stuff.
But the book was published by Bad Moon Books in April 2009. Apparently, it's quite limited.
So it's like a reverse Bachman books.
Yeah.
Instead of publishing him then under a different name, they're publishing it now of his older stuff. That'd be interesting. Yeah. Like I said,
the books of Arabat are a more modern series that he did as well.
I think the book is very well written.
That's his young adult fantasy series. I'd be so curious to read one of those.
Yeah, what would that be like?
Because he wrote 3 of them.
Because boy, his early work ain't young adult. Let me tell you.
So the books of Arabat are written and illustrated by Barker.
His illustrations are interesting.
The series is intended to contain 5 books, 3 of which have been published from 2002 to 2011. The series takes place on the Arabat, a fictional archipelago consisting of 25 islands, 1 for each hour of the day and 1 extra.
Have you seen his artwork?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like what his young adult artwork would look like, I would be very curious about. So, like I said, as an overall review, I liked it. I would say that if you were at all hesitant or haven't read Barker in a while, he's still Barker. It's still in there. It's just it definitely has a sense of evolution. And as long as you go in and don't think of it as a Pinhead book, I think you'll be all right.
This is a young adult series, but I'm going to read you the description of one of these characters because now I want to read this series. So the main character is a woman named Candy Quackenbush, right? She encounters a master thief named John Mischief, who looks human except for the antlers on his head. Mischief's 7 brothers live on these horns, appearing only as heads. Oh, man.
Okay. Wow.
I know this is his young adult series, but man, He's almost got me curious to check this out. Yeah, you know what? He was nominated for the Bram Stoker Award for Best Work for Young Readers. So it can't be that far off for him. Oh, yeah. Like, I'm reading the description here. Like, rotting lighthouse stairs. Interesting. Yeah, this sounds like it's you know what? It sounds very sort of like PG Imagica.
I mean, maybe it is. I really I'm not mystified. I'm really intrigued by the idea of him doing young adult books.
Well, because you're not going to get the whole genital descriptions, are you?
Well, the thing is, I don't know. Now, they're not going to be explicit, but
Holy shit, yeah. The American Library Association picked Abarat as one of its best books for young adults.
Well, look, the thing is, there is a...
Yeah.
You can talk to children honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you can try to be, sugarcoat it. And so maybe he's being honest without the explicit words. So will he say that a character is hung like a giraffe, which actually is a phrase used in this book? Probably not. But will he say something like, Johnny always seemed to have a woman on his arm, or always did well with the girls, and was known as somebody that you didn't want to get into a car with if you'd had a few drinks. You could talk to children in a way that communicates the same thing. Yeah. So when you say, will there be all the genital stuff? Well, they're not going to say that, but I don't know. That's not going to be a very serious book that deals adult.
The Publisher Weekly's description is the author's imagination runs wild as he conjures some striking imagery and cooks up a surreal stew of character portraits. But much of the novel feels like a wind-up for the books that follow. After this rather unwieldy 400-page ride, readers may be disappointed by so many unresolved strands of the plot. Oh. So it's part of a bigger idea.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm curious. I now that you've reviewed one of his more modern books, I'm kind of curious now to see what of his more modern stuff I could read.
Well, this is a good one. Can't speak for any of the other ones, but this is a good one. So,
well, there you go.
Now, for something very different. I got alerted to this, speaking of Criterion Channel, to wind all the way back to our earlier stuff. Criterion sends out little newsletters announcing when they've added movies and, highlighting different films and that type of thing. And I always read them because I'm always interested. And it mentioned, because I believe, is this like Women's History Month? What are we in here? Is that this month? Is March?
Not that long ago, we had the Women's Day. Women's Day?
Okay. So, here it is. It's, okay, Women's History Month is March 1st to March 3rd. So it's March. Right. Okay. That's what I thought, because Criterion was highlighting female filmmakers, influential female actors and actresses, writers, all that type of thing. And so I was reading through this, and I came across a movie that sounded interesting just on its really basic premise. It's from 1982. It's called A Question of Silence. And the synopsis is, the plot is about a psychiatrist who is trying to find out why three women who have never met each other before conspired to kill a man they did not know. And I thought, whoa, that's different. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I went and I looked, and I saw that it was a Dutch film. So I'm like, foreign film. Always a good sign.
Dutch film. Here we go.
Yep, Dutch film. And it was...
What year is this?
82.
Okay, so there's some fabulous hair.
Oh, yeah. Well, plus I like that time period, so there is that part of it. And I had read that the filmmaker was a well-known feminist Dutch filmmaker. So I went, okay, I'm willing to watch stuff. I'll take a chance on this. It's only 90 minutes, which is normally kind of my, worst case, I spent an hour and a half on something if I don't like it. I love it. I was thinking about it for a couple of days after, as I told Lando. So the movie is very, very interestingly constructed in that it's one of these where it keeps revealing different pieces of the actual murder as it goes along. So you don't see it at first. All you see in the beginning is you see four different women. The first woman you actually see is the psychiatrist who, and this feels like a very specific, well, it is, obviously, it's a film. The way she's shown, she's married to a lawyer. So it's lawyer and psychiatrist. The wife is a psychiatrist. The husband is a lawyer. And they're sitting at home, and he's reading a book, and she's sitting there, and she starts kind of trying to, like get him in the mood. Like she's playing around with him. She's, being sexually aggressive with him. And he's like, I have to read. I have to stay for this case. And she finally just kind of manages to get him aroused enough that he throws the book away, and, they start fooling around. So that's our introduction to her, which is a very specific dynamic between the two of them. So, or at least that's what it seems to be setting up, which is normally in a lot of movies, it's the reverse, where the wife is working on something and the husband's like, hey, she's like, no, I'm busy. I don't feel like it, whatever. And he's like, and pressures her into it. This is the reverse. So again, very specific choice to start the movie off with. Then we cut to the 3 women who will be arrested for the murder and admit with no problem whatsoever to murdering a shopkeeper. And the first one that we see is a housewife who we see at home, who speaks almost not for the entire film. We don't know that yet, but we don't see her say anything. But she's at home with a young child, and there's a knock on the door, and she's just listening to the radio and smoking a cigarette. There's a knock at the door, and there's policemen who say, we need you to come down. We have a couple of questions for you. Then we cut to a woman who works in a restaurant or a deli of some type, and she's kind of the classic, slightly large framed, very loud, boisterous, kind of ha, joking with everybody kind of woman that you would expect in one of these types of places. Almost that she would be the owner of a bar, one of those types, where she's very, very loud and kind of, and the guys are joking with her and she's throwing shit back at him and that type of thing. And sure enough, the cops show up and she knows exactly why they're there. And she's like, oh, I know what you're here for. Let me just get my knitting because I'm not going to be coming back here anytime soon. And just goes off with them laughing, right? Then we get the third woman, and the third woman is the executive assistant. Now, of course, the time frame of this, they're calling it a secretary. So the secretary to this, I don't know exactly what he's supposed to do, but it's some kind of high-powered firm that's in real estate, I think, or acquisitions or something like that. And, she's taking down his notes, and he's asking her for a report on something so that, they can decide whether to make an acquisition or whatever. And again, the cops come in. And the guy's like, oh, she's too busy. She's taking down my notes. And the woman just is like, no, I know why they're here, and gets up and walks out. And so then the next thing we see is the 3 of them, or then we see the psychiatrist. She's at home. She gets a call. And they say, yeah, we need you to come down and try to figure out what the hell's going on with these women, because they're nuts and we can't figure out why. And what we see is then the 3 of them sitting there. And the investigating officer is like, okay, so you all admit that you murdered this guy and you're not denying it and you're willing to sign the statement saying that this is what you did. And they're all like, uh-huh, except the one who's silent, who doesn't say anything. But they all basically nod in agreement. And he says something along the lines of, he says, okay, so you could just sign and put down their names. He says this to the one who owns the restaurant, the loud, boisterous one. And she's like, well, I would, except I have no idea what their names are. And he's like, wait, you've never met before? And she's like, no, not before the day that we murdered the guy. We'd never seen each other before. And he is baffled by that. So that's one of the reasons they call him a psychiatrist, because he says to her, we don't know what this is. They've never met each other. They claim they don't know the shopkeeper that they killed, but they all decided at the same time to kill him, and we can't work it out. They're clearly nuts, but we need you to evaluate them for whether they are fit to stand trial or if they need to be committed. So the basic kind of are they sane or not thing, right? But he's saying they're insane. So we just need you to certify that they're out of their minds because this makes no sense. And so she's like, okay, well, I'll evaluate them. And so there's a long course of the movie where she is interviewing all of them, or all of them except the one. The one will not speak. The one just sits there and just looks. I don't even know what the expression, I don't know that I could describe it properly. It's not upset. It's not defiant. It's not even really resigned. It's more of just, well, this is now where I'm stuck. Just kind of like, okay, I'm here. I'm not happy about it, but whatever. This is what it is. And that one she gets nothing out of. She gets some reactions in terms of facial expressions, mostly when she asks about the woman's children and her husband, but no actual responses. That woman, I don't believe, speaks until probably over an hour into the 90-minute film. You never get anything out of her. the boisterous woman, is that the one she interviews next? I'm trying to remember. I'm actually scrubbing through to see who she talks to second. She talks to... Who she talk to second? No, she talks to the secretary second. The secretary is the one who seems most happy about what she did. She always has this smirk, and, you know, she's very happy to talk, but she's not overly elaborate, but she always just kind of looks like she is smarter than the psychiatrist or understands something the psychiatrist doesn't. So when she's talking to her, she kind of is asking her, what's your background, all the rest of it, or, are you married, this type of thing. Like, she's trying to get some background on them. And she's like, oh, no, never married. And then she's telling the story about how her mom basically would infer that she was a hooker because she wasn't married or settled down. And, that she didn't see a point, and that she worked at a place where she was smarter than all the men. And as they're talking, we start getting flashbacks to the days or their lives before this event happened. So we see when the woman who's not speaking is talking, we just see her with her child, and you see her go into the shop. She happens to look at a dress, and she goes into the shop. That's all we really see. Then she's talking to the secretary, and then we see the secretary is in a boardroom with all these men, and she is giving a report on something, on whether there should be an acquisition of whatever. And her boss basically has her give this summary, and then she has a recommendation, and then another guy at the table essentially says the same thing she just said, and they all say, yep, that's a good idea. So we're starting to get a picture of what's going on here, which is that these are women who, we don't really know what about the mute one, whose name is Christine. We don't know about Christine yet, but we clearly have the idea of why the secretary has no problem with the fact that she's murdered a man. Like, we're starting to get the picture. Then she talks to the restaurant owner, and the restaurant owner is laughing constantly, and she's knitting, and she's talking about the fact that, she was married, but her husband, it makes it sound like he died, but you're not really sure. And based on what we see later, there's some doubt on whether he died or he just left. But she's like, oh, yeah, my husband, we had good times, we had bad times, just like most married couples. And she's like, well, do you mind living alone? And she's like, no, I don't mind living alone. Nobody tells me what to do. I can do anything I want. And she's like, well, do you think you'd ever get remarried? And she's like laughing. She's like, no, please, why would I get remarried? This is fine. I like being able to just run my life the way we want. And then we cut to her at her house when she comes home, and she has a cat, and there's nobody else there. And she kind of looks out the window, and she turns around. And then we see like a flashback of when she was there, and her husband were there, and her daughter was there. And they're all laughing, or at least you think they're all laughing. And then you see her look at them, and the husband doesn't look happy, and the daughter doesn't look happy. And then she doesn't look happy. And then they just disappear, and she's just in the apartment alone. So then we cut back to, now we start to actually see what happened on the day of the murder, where all three of them happen to go into the shop, and for whatever reason, and this is never explicitly explained, the only thing I can think is it's one of two things, so what you see her do is she shoplifts a dress, and the owner sees her. Now, the owner comes off as not monstrous or anything like that. We don't really get a sense of whether he's a good or a bad person, but he never does anything that would make you hate him.
It sounds like it's not, they don't want you to feel like, oh, it was a vengeance
justified
killing.
Yeah, right. But he sees her shoplift the thing, and he comes over and he confronts her about it, at which point she then takes something else and puts it in her purse. And again, there's never really a reason given. She doesn't say anything. So it's either one of those things where there's that idea that you do things because you feel nothing and you start breaking. There's some kind of thing for that where you do things just to get a reaction out of yourself.
Yeah, you're numb.
Or that she doesn't have a lot of money and she can't afford this and she just wants it. I don't know which. It's hard to tell. So it's one of those two things, or at least that's what I read into it. And then as she does that, we cut back to then the psychiatrist keeps trying to talk to her. She won't talk, but she's drawing these pictures of her husband, and her kids, and in a house with a box around them, and she keeps drawing it. And of course, I'm sure there's some kind of psychological aspect to her feeling trapped or whatever. And so, and again, she's talking to the the boisterous woman who's just kind of laughing about it and saying, oh, this is, I assume you're going to find us crazy, and then I'll have this place where there's lots of people around me, and I'll get, somebody will be paying for all my meals, and I have this lovely place with all these plants. And then she talks to the secretary, and the secretary starts asking her, starts analyzing her back by saying, because she talks about the fact that she did actually engage in paid sex with a man right before the murder, and you see the act of it, and she's just completely dead-eyed, and she's just basically collecting the money, and then she leaves. And the psychiatrist is saying, well, was that enjoyable? And she's like, what does it matter? I got paid for it. And she's like, well, it does matter. And she's like, why? Is your sex life great? Do you and your husband have sex all the time? Do you always orgasm? Like, she's firing back at her, and the psychiatrist is clearly rattled by it and moves on to a different line of questioning. So then we cut back to the shop again, and we see that the woman keeps stuffing stuff into her bag. And then we see the psychiatrist basically takes a hanger out of a dress and starts to bend the metal. And then you see the boisterous woman they all look at each other. And inside the shop, there are 4 other women. There is a black woman, an older woman, probably 60s, 70s, and 2 young women who I didn't put this together at first, but I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be a couple. I think they're supposed to be together. At first, I just thought they were 2 girls who happened to be in there, but as the movie goes on, I think we're meant to know that they are actually a romantic couple. And this is important as it goes on. So that's all who's in the shop. So it's these 3 women, the shop owner, and these 4 other women. So the 3 of them then start brutally assault. Now, we don't ever see it graphically, but we understand they're taking the coat hanger, because the coroner later says that basically the one woman took the coat hanger, bent it, put it into his neck, and ripped his body open to his scrotum as they were kicking and beating. And it's very unemotional. They're just staring at him, and they're just pounding on him and ripping him up. And these other 4 women are just watching until the guy's dead. And then we see the 4 other women leave, go outside, kind of all look at each other and just walk away. None of them call for help. None of them say anything. They all just disperse, which I thought was going to be the last time we saw them in the movie. I didn't know whether they were going to show up again. But we see the murder. And at this point, we cut back, and the psychiatrist is there with her husband and 2 other people, and they're kind of discussing the case. And the husband's like, well, of course they're nuts. And the psychiatrist is like, I'm not convinced that they're insane. I don't know that these women are lunatics. He's like, well, of course they're lunatics. They went crazy and killed this man. What other explanation could there be? And you can tell now that what we saw in the beginning, which seemed to be kind of a happy marriage, is not that way. And the way that he's talking, it's hard to word it correctly, but he's demeaning her level of expertise in deference to his own perception of what's going on. So this obviously is a movie about the dehumanization and the minimalization of women. It's very clear. So if you don't like that, guess what? This is not your film, because that is the viewpoint, so it goes on, and she's listening to these interviews, and she's talking to him, and she is now starting to very clearly sympathize with them. And there's a series of scenes that are very hard to categorize, because I don't know how. I'd said to you at one point, I'd be curious what your and your wife's view on this would be, because I know what this looks like to me, but I don't know that that's really what it is. Because I don't know whether some scenes are meant to show simple affection, or that there is perhaps something latent with the psychiatrist that these women are stirring up. I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I've not read any deep analysis of the film. I don't know if I didn't want to read anything. I'm just going by my own reactions to it. But in any event, she meets with them all one more time before the trial. Trial happens. And in the gallery are the 4 women who were in the shop. And all 3 of the women insisted that no one else was in there. And so nobody knows who these 4 women are. They're completely unknown to any of the investigators. I'm pretty sure they don't even tell the psychiatrist they're in there. So the only people who know they were there are us as the viewers. But they come in and they're sitting there. And they're watching this trial. And the trial's going on, and the psychiatrist is basically giving her evaluation and is saying, I'm not convinced that they are insane. I think they knew what they were doing. And the prosecutor is like, well, wait, how? Why? This doesn't make any sense. Why would these three women who didn't know each other all agree to kill a man that they didn't know? That doesn't make any sense. They must be insane. And doing the same thing that the husband, who's also a lawyer, was doing, which is basically saying, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't be right. This doesn't make sense because of our perception of what happened here. And as that's going on, the psychiatrist is becoming more and more hostile towards the prosecutors, but then they have to break. And the husband and her go to lunch, and he's like, you might want to walk back what you're saying in there because people are going to hear about this case. And she's like, well, what do you mean? What are you worried about? You think that this is going to cause people to think of me differently? And he's like, well, it could. And she says, well, wait a minute. Are you worried about my perception by people, or are you worried about yours? Are you worried you'll lose clients? And at first he insists it's not that. But then as she keeps pushing back and keeps pushing back, he gets to a point, he's like, well, how am I going to need clients if, and then he stops himself. So right there, of course, he's giving himself away. And we know that, no, he's not worried about her. He's worried about what her effect on him will be. So this is what I mean about as it goes on, we're seeing more and more of what the dynamics are, not only in these women's lives, but this woman's life. And so finally they come back into court and she says, yeah, I cannot say that these women are insane. And so the prosecutor's like, well, wait a minute. Oh, how can that be? What motive would three strangers? And she says, look, I'm not here to establish motive. That's the court's job. I was brought in here to determine whether these women are insane or not.
Is this going to the idea that a individual in an insane situation comes off as insane when they respond accordingly? That kind of idea that women, because they are so talked down to and so considered secondary, and there's so much misogyny, that their response is not insane when taken into the context of the bigger picture.
Well, that's what you could think, except that, and I think this is very smart of the movie, the prosecutor outright says, hold on, are you saying that you approve of this crime? Which is essentially what you're asking. Was this justified? That's what you're asking, right? Is whether the film
murder is not
explicable.
Justified, but you understand why the murderers did what they did.
Well, the movie wisely never answers that. Her immediate response is, that is not my job. I'm not here to approve or disapprove. I was asked to come here to evaluate the sanity of these women. And I'm telling you that based on what they've experienced, and their responses to me, I don't believe that they are insane. And the prosecutor just cannot accept it. And then it's basically saying, so he says the thing about, oh, do you approve it? And she says, that's not my function here. And he says, how are you going to explain that these three women who just happen to be in the same shop at the same time just go ahead and butcher a man for no reason, instead of he says something like, instead of just doing the harmless act of buying a dress, which she doesn't like that. She jumps on and says, why is that a harmless thing? Why should that be I think he says pastime. And she says, why is it a pastime to go shopping? Because it is. I mean, the way he's saying it is.
Well, he's making a sexist comment. Yeah.
Right. And he's saying all these things about, the savagery of what they're doing. And of course, the defense of theirs.
Why couldn't they have just been passive women casually buying clothes? Because that's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. So then, and now we're towards the end of the film now. There's only a few minutes left. So I'm like, okay, where is this going? And he says something along the lines of, because she's getting very heated now and being very angry because, of course, he's categorizing these things and saying things that are a very male-centric view of what's going on, right? And they keep saying, there must have been a motive. There must have been a motive, and if there's no motive, doesn't make that insane. And finally she says, there's something that nobody here is thinking about, which is that the person they killed is a man who owns a dress shop. And she says, that is not something that you can overlook. And the prosecutor says, I don't understand why that makes a difference. He says, are you saying to me that if the owner of the shop had been a woman, that something would have been different?
No, it's a great metaphor for male domination, isn't it?
Yes. And as soon as he says that, the boisterous woman starts laughing hysterically at the suggestion that it is interchangeable if they killed a man or a woman, that there would be no difference. She starts laughing, and then the other two women start laughing, and then the four women in the audience, the ones who were in the shop, start laughing, and then a bunch of women in the gallery start laughing, and then the psychiatrist starts laughing. And basically, at that point, they clear the whole thing out. They make everybody leave because, of course, they're being disruptive. And you just see these women, they're all laughing. It's not every single person in the courtroom, but it's there are more than just them. And you see them escort the four women who were in the shop out. And the psychiatrist, so then the lead, the head judge or whatever, I don't know how it works in the Dutch system or how it did it this time, says, all right, we're just going to keep going without them here because they can't be controlled. At which point the psychiatrist just walks out of the proceeding entirely. So we really don't know what then gets said because she leaves. And now we're at the end of the movie. And the movie ends where she walks out and the four women walk out after her and they look at each other. And the psychiatrist kind of looks over and sees her husband who's like, get in the car. Like he's motioning, get in the car. Like he's all pissed off. So she looks at him and then she looks back at the women and starts to smile. And then the movie just ends. So we don't really know what happens after that. But it's a very specific film. Like it's clearly, and I was thinking about it because I didn't really, because after that I'm sitting there and I'm going, that's really interesting. Because I know there's all kinds of stuff in here and some of it's just going to go right by me because I'm not a woman. I don't, some stuff in here, probably a woman viewer would pick up immediately and I know I'm missing. There's stuff that I probably just am not seeing or am not understanding correctly because I'm not a woman.
You're probably not picking up on levels of microaggressions.
Yes. But then, like I said, I literally yesterday, because I watched it on Friday, I woke up Saturday morning and the first thing I thought of was, shit, those two women were together. That's why they felt targeted, because lesbians in the early 80s were not going to be seen by a man. I mean, I don't know anything about Dutch society, but the black woman got it right away. The older woman got it right away. I didn't put together that those two women were together until I woke up on Saturday. It's the first fucking thought in my mind was, fuck, those women were together. Got it. Now it all makes sense because I couldn't figure them out. I'm like, why would two younger women, I mean, don't get me wrong, young women are subject to shit too, but I didn't put together that they were a couple. And once that clicked for me, I went, oh, okay, I got it. Now the four of them looking at each other in silent, and that's why question is silence. Like the title even is interesting. I'm like, okay, they didn't need to say, they never speak a word through the whole movie. Those four women who were the observers never say a word. They all know exactly that they're not going to say anything. They all show up. At no point do I think any of them ever said a word about any of the things they were doing. They just knew what was going on. And while they couldn't be party to the murder, they understood why it was happening and they were going to say nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, this speaks to me as a powerful statement about misogyny and the male dominant culture.
It was really good.
It's an art film about that idea. The fact that the men cannot see it because they are in control.
Yes, there's a ton of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, I jumped over a lot, too, because there's a point where the psychiatrist talks to the silent woman's husband, and the silent woman, the first thing she says is, please remind my husband that my son needs to go to some kind of lesson. So it's only about her kids, nothing about the husband. And so the husband's there and he's like, I don't understand. I think we had a good marriage. I mean, we had our problems like everybody else. But then as he's going on, he's like, she never could keep the kids quiet. I work all day. She sits here and does nothing. I come home. She can't keep the kids quiet. I'm like, she doesn't have anything.
She does nothing.
His phrasing, I believe, is she doesn't have anything to do all day. And I'm like, Got it. I understand now. Like, because up to that point, I'm just sitting there because she says nothing.
How old are the kids?
Oh, one of them's in a crib, in like one of the, the playpen thing.
She's got nothing to do all day. Okay.
Yeah, and she has at least 2 kids, possibly 3. I think she might have 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to do all day. And you see the kid is, like jumping around, and of course she has to feed them, keep the house. Look, sitting at home with the kids all day is not doing nothing. So anybody who thinks that,
well, she's not. I'll tell you right now, she's not sitting.
At one point you see her sitting, but I think it's because the kid's asleep. That's it.
Yeah, well, yeah,
but,
she's cooking, she's cleaning,
all the rest of it.
She's chasing the kids around. Yeah,
raising kids is not doing nothing all day. It's that easy.
But again,
this
is a male view. This is it's a woman director. I take it, right?
Yes,
yeah,
a well-known feminist
Dutch
director. Yes.
But yeah, this is a. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it almost feels like a Thomas Pynchon novel to some degree. That like the absurdity of it, this idea that this thing that happens, or who's the guy who wrote High Rise?
Ballard.
Yeah, this almost gets into that realm of Ballard as well. This idea that
right.
there's a thing that all women realize, that men are in control, that women are paid less, that women are treated like second-class citizens, and it is very often through these microaggressions, some of them not so micro, and the men investigating the case end up building the case for the viewer why these 3 women did it. Why did they do it to this one particular man? Well, the idea of a man owning a dress shop just put them over the top, I suppose. The pure absurdity of it.
Yeah, it's
like a man telling you how to use a tampon.
Kind of. Yeah, I think that is the idea of it.
You know what? I love watching that show Taskmaster, and we're going back and we're watching old seasons of it. And at one point, there's a season where it's was it 4 men and 1 woman, and they go on stage, and one of the tasks they have to complete is they have to do a series of things, and one of them is tie on a tie, as well as 3 or 4 other things. And the woman goes, "Okay, hold on." She's like, "What the hell?" She's like, "I know that you guys have tied ties your whole life, but she's like, isn't this a bit sexist?" And they're all like, "Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah." And she's like, "Listen, it's like, you want a competition where one of the things is put a tampon in?" She's like, "I beat all 4 of you." She's like, "We'll see how well you do." And they're like, "Okay." And they changed the rules. So instead of having to tie a tie, you just had to loop the tie around your neck, because they realized that they were unintentionally being sexist. And
Sure.
The men build the case that they themselves are trying to figure out to the audience. Or to the right audience, because you know what? I'm sure there are men who watch this movie who get to the end and go, "I don't get it," which has happened.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
So no, it is a powerful statement. It's a metaphor. It's all a big metaphor. It's a powerful statement, though.
I kind of watched it as on a lark. Honestly, I wasn't really sure whether I was going to like it or not, because these things can be heavy-handed. I mean, they can be. Whether they're right or wrong isn't really the point. Sometimes they aren't done with a lot of subtlety. But it reminded me a lot of that movie, The Shout, that I talked about, where I went, okay, there's a lot of stuff in here that we don't explicitly know the answer to, but we're given enough clues and we see enough things that...
Well, she kept it vague enough that the audience, can kind of come to some conclusions about it themselves.
Yes,
which is,
I'm sure a lot of people will not get why they're all laughing. That is like what's going on there. I think that throws a lot of people off. I've seen people who've said, "I don't understand what the ending doesn't make sense to me."
Apparently, when this was shown in theaters, there were women in the audience who would start laughing at the same time.
I have no trouble believing that.
Yeah,
no trouble. So. Like I said, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Now, the nice part about this movie is it is on Criterion, but it is also on Tubi. So you can watch it for free. I would highly recommend it. I think there's a lot about it that's really interesting. I think it makes you think about, because it doesn't give you everything it wants. I mean, obviously, I've spoiled a lot of it to a degree, but I've also not talked about a lot of
whatever.
it. So
you've spoiled your interpretation of it.
Yes, I was going to say, there's a lot that I didn't literally lay out the entire movie.
Yeah, other people will watch it and catch very different aspects of it.
Yeah, because the movie never shows the actual final judgment. We don't know whether, I'm sure they were convicted. They admitted to it. So
that's your vision of it.
Yeah. Well, whether they were judged insane or not, I don't know. They obviously admitted to the crime. They signed a statement saying we killed him.
But that's what I mean. You're all this is your interpretation. There are other people who may watch it and say, well, of course they're insane.
Well, the other thing is, I don't know that it matters because
it matters to the individual.
Well, what I mean by that is the ending shows the 4 women who obviously were there but didn't do anything, and then the psychiatrist who at this point is not the same person she was at the beginning of the movie.
No.
And so that's where I think the importance is okay, this isn't just 3 crazy women, which is what the movie starts off with.
No.
So, and apparently it is partially based on some real event but apparently it was a woman who was killed, which is interesting. So I'm trying to find what the original news story was that it was based on. It says highly controversial, but also highly acclaimed film's classic. Where's the thing on what it was based on? There was something about what it's actually, that there was an actual event. I think it's in the trivia, maybe.
What was the title again?
A Question of Silence.
Hold on.
Damn it. I saw it somewhere. It mentioned that there was a real event, but that the victim was a woman, which is kind of interesting because that question comes up in the movie. True event. Let me look. Question of Silence. Does anything say it? Hold on a minute. Not exactly. Controversy upon its release. Is there anything about the actual... I saw it somewhere where it says that there was a real event that... Hold on, I'm reading through it. Metaphorical. Yeah, of course it's metaphor. Yep, we get that part. Laughter. Of course, now I can't find it. There was some place...
Oh, listen. At the end of the day, regardless of what it's based on, we're talking about the artistic cinema here.
Sure. I was just curious because I meant to look up what the...
And if you find something later on, we'll be around at a later date.
But like I said, the nice part is, unlike a lot of movies where I'm like, the only way you're going to be able to watch it is blah, blah, blah. This one is actually...
available.
This is on Tubi, which you can watch, as I always say, without having to even have an account. Because that's the best part of it. They don't need to know anything about you, which I always appreciate when a service doesn't care who you are and just lets you do stuff with it. That's great. But it is also on Criterion. As far as I could tell, I was looking at the Tubi version in the background. It looks like it's relatively the same. I mean, the Criterion one might be a little cleaner, but this is not a case where sometimes Tubi has really, really bad versions of movies. But as far as I can tell, this is the same copy, which it's not pristine. We were talking about how beautiful like something like Back to the Future looks. It's not like that. They have not gone back and done a complete restoration on it, but it's perfectly fine. Very watchable, but it's not. It's not Blade Runner 2049 in terms of picture quality, but that's not really what matters in this film. This is about the content more than the presentation. Perfectly watchable though, and like I said, as far as I can tell, both versions are, if not the same one, equally close or very close. So it's not like you're going to see a very degraded version on Tubi. So you can go watch it for free. Again, Question of Silence, 1982, and I thought it was great. I thought about it long after I had watched it, which is usually the sign of a good movie for me. Is when I'm thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. So lots of reviews. You have a wide variety in there, I think. So whatever one of those sounds the best to you, go ahead and enjoy it in whatever format you choose. And that's it for this week. So have a wonderful weekend, and we will talk to you again next week. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.